All right, everyone. Welcome to This Dumb Week. It has been an exceptionally dumb week for me. Alex, how's your week been as dumb as mine?
I feel good. I don't know. I mean, the dumb is not stopping, but I'm coping better, I think.
I mean, you've acclimated to it. You've got accustomed to it. You're adjusting. You're comfortable.
Apparently, 44 years is what it takes.
Okay.
That's the critical mass.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. Well, Alex, you know how we have been focused a lot on possible, AI issues as we approach the singularity or the potential singularity, as they say, where, AIs will become autonomous and possibly have their own motivations, or what we might call motivations, whether or not there's a spiritualistic aspect that we would refer to as intrinsic or not, but that we worry about the threats that may come about as they gain their autonomy or their own indistinguishable, individualized identities. Well, I
Yes,
think we might.
I've noticed. By the way, if you want to discuss how I think we're already in the singularity, we can pick that up at some point. But
We certainly can do that. But if we're not in the singularity, Alex, I think we have maybe dropped our attention somewhat and sort of missed the risk that the rest of the animal kingdom might be thrusting upon us. We have failed to wonder what happens if the animal kingdom gains its own sort of sentience and becomes competitive with us and decides to take action. So we might want to focus a little bit at the beginning of this episode on those dangers.
Apparently, a raccoon broke into an ABC liquor store through the ceiling. It ransacked several aisles, leaving a trail of destruction, and then had the nerve to pass out drunk on the employee bathroom floor. So the raccoon damaged $250 worth of liquor. Animal Protection says that after a few hours, the mischievous mammal sobered up. He was alert, unharmed, and was released back into the wild, and maybe learned a little bit of a lesson.
Now you see that. That is a bail reform sort of policy, just releasing this criminal right back onto the street because we're sleeping on a potential threat vector here, Alex.
Right. I feel like this is the basis for starting at least a dozen institutes and NGOs based on the threats from natural intelligence.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you recall, over time, the CIA and other spy agencies have dabbled in trying to make our woodland creature friends spies for us at many points in time, trying to make birds in particular spy apparatuses. Right? You're familiar with this sort of activity?
I believe there is this. I would call it a myth or a rumor, but I think in Norway it is effectively a belief that Putin is sending whales over with harnesses of spy equipment. So you can look up that story next.
Okay.
So yes.
Well, okay. So using them as spies is definitely part of folklore, at least, and there is documented cases where we have at least explored the possibility, whether or not we've gained much traction. But what if we were using them to commit small acts of terrorism, Alex? What if the animal kingdom was being conscripted to commit small acts of terrorism where no one could be found, no human could be found to technically blame?
You mean like spreading some kind of a virus, or?
I'm thinking smaller scale at the moment, right? Because spreading a virus could definitely be a thing, but viruses are a little bit unpredictable, right? But what if we had targeted attacks, targeted assaults?
Go on, hit me.
Flyers posted in a San Francisco Bay Area neighborhood warn this is not a joke.
Let me see.
No, don't let him in.
More than 5 people have been attacked by a very mean squirrel.
But it was biting and scratching, so then it wasn't furry and cute.
Joan Heblack walks 5 miles every day in her scenic neighborhood, where she says wildlife usually shies away from humans. She got a text from a neighborhood realtor alerting her that a squirrel attacked a woman nearby.
Did that seem outlandish to you? Was it like, no way, that couldn't have happened?
Yeah, I thought, how weird.
That was until days later, when the aggressive animal jumped on her leg.
I started waving my leg around and screaming, get off me, as he kept on clinging more tightly and biting me.
The bite so vicious it sent Heblack to the emergency room.
They said squirrels do not have rabies.
Still, residents are nervous about the nutty squirrel.
Wildlife experts are still looking for this squirrel.
Well, we don't know her name, so how would they be able to find her?
Heblack won't stop her daily walks, but the next time a squirrel crosses her path, she's moving to the other side of the street.
So I'm growing increasingly concerned, Alex, that we're sleeping on a threat vector. Like, the evidence is right there, but of course the plausible deniability is also there, right? You know, these are just animals sometimes get goofy, right? You know, it's definitely not caused by anyone.
These could be practice runs for sure. We could be testing out our defenses.
And you see, the thing is, Alex, you know, once is interesting, twice might be a coincidence, but 3 times is a pattern.
A motorist in North Carolina had a close call along Route 74 near Bryson City Wednesday morning. Authorities in Swain County shared the 911 call.
Okay, you may not believe me, but I just had a bald eagle drop a cat through my windshield. It absolutely shattered my windshield.
The dispatcher responded calmly, sending her to a location where she could meet with highway patrol officers and make a report.
I do believe you, honestly. Okay, I had a witness. He's like, that is the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Scavenging is common behavior for bald eagles, and Kendrick Weeks with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission says the cat could have been roadkill.
Another question, is the cat still alive? No, it is not.
Eagles sometimes lose their grip on what they've caught, especially if they're being harassed by another raptor or the prey becomes too heavy. It's not clear if the unfortunate cat slipped from the eagle's talons or was dropped on purpose. I'm Jennifer King.
Not clear if it was dropped on purpose, indeed. Right, Alex. Not clear. I'm sure these predators that have been honing in their skills for hundreds of years have just suddenly lost their skill.
I believe the quote you were going for, Gator, by the way, is once is happenstance, twice is coincidence. The third time, it's enemy action.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I was quote, and I'm only correcting it because it even more supports your thesis here.
Excellent. Okay, those all came into my view. And they are all contemporaneous. I'm not grabbing things from across time. These are all just recent. So they came across my view, and so I decided that was how we were going to open up the show. I think I'm on some sort of...
We're going to be worried about AI, the humans, the sun, surely. There has to be a fourth here, yes. Which is nature.
Either when nature attacks, just gets sentient on its own, or we are weaponizing nature. Either one, I am afraid.
Yeah, so at different scales, you know, there's like the microbes, there's the climate, there's and now the macro.
Yes. Well, we're going to jump into some sort of disconnected stories now. I don't have anything more on the animals attack vector here, or the animals run amok, as I have it titled here. But we're going to have a very, very short sort of Epstein-related update here, Alex. And I don't know if you happen to have one of those large 40-ounce malt liquor bottles on you by chance. But if you do, you might want to pop it open and start pouring it out in honor of one of our lost homies. CNN reports Larry Summers receives lifetime ban from prestigious economic association over Epstein ties. Larry Summers has been banned for life from the American Economic Association, a professional organization for economists with more than 17,000 members, over his ties to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. In a statement on Tuesday, the group said it had accepted Summers' voluntary resignation. Effective immediately, the AEA has imposed a lifetime prohibition on Mr. Summers attending, speaking at, or otherwise participating in AEA-sponsored events or activities, including serving in any editorial or refereeing capacity for AEA journalists, the organization said. Summers has long been one of America's most prominent economists, serving as Treasury Secretary under Bill Clinton and as president of Harvard University. He also has a long-standing relationship with AEA. In 1993, Summers received the group's John Bates Clark Medal, given to outstanding economists under age 40. But the AEA's ban follows new details of Summers' relationship with Epstein after a House committee published years of email correspondence between the two men last month, including exchanges where Summers made sexist remarks and sought romantic advice from Epstein. In a statement last month, Summers said he was deeply ashamed of his actions and recognized the pain they have caused, adding that he would step back from public commitments. Summers has since taken leave from teaching at Harvard while the university investigates his relationship with Epstein. He also resigned from his position on the board of OpenAI. The AEA condemns Mr. Summers' conduct as reflected in publicly reported communications as fundamentally inconsistent with its standards of professional integrity and with the trust placed in its mentors within the economics profession, the AEA said Tuesday. Alex, did you happen to procure a 40-ounce malt liquor beverage?
Yes, quick. I ran quickly to the liquor store.
All right, excellent.
Yeah. It's the announcement should have read, Larry Summers is led Harvard, been the Treasury Secretary, been a prominent economist for years. As if that wasn't enough. The structure was correct, but I feel the connector was wrong.
I mean, maybe, I didn't actually recall the advice that he was asking for from Jeffrey Epstein with regards to, women troubles. But I guess if you were to,
it was bad.
Was it?
Oh my God, it was so bad. It was, it really doesn't get any worse in certain ways. He was asking for advice about his affair with a mentee where he admitted that she wasn't really that into him, but she was sticking around because she appreciated the prestige, probably, of being his mentee. It is like it is. It does not. Sure, it could get worse, but it takes work to get worse than what the email said. It was actually quite something. A real Me Too case, by a self-admitted powerful man who, self-admittedly was leveraging his power to self-admittedly get in the pants of some lady who, self-admittedly was not that ethical herself, to be completely honest with you. But, we look down upon that these days. So, yeah, I think that really was pretty bad.
Wow. Okay. That is... no bueno.
But he chose to go to Epstein for advice on this matter, which is quite something.
That takes some chutzpah, right? Chutzpah is the correct term that we would be using in this situation.
That is, yes. With a hua.
With a hua?
With a chutzpah.
All right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, in less scandalous news here, we have from Politico. Judge blocks prosecutors' access to James Comey's lawyer's email and data. Now, when I read this headline, I'm like, whoa, they were trying to access his actual attorney's email and data. But it does turn out that they are referring to the person that he had hired at the FBI to help him leak and do media coordination with, who happened to also be an attorney. So, yes, I guess technically at some point, just like the Clintons are wont to do, they hire people to keep close to them who they sometimes also have as counsel to make sure that all the
Clinton's defense, I feel Trump is known to be following similar tactics. But yes.
A federal judge dealt a setback Saturday to the Justice Department's effort to re-indict former FBI Director James Comey, blocking prosecutors' access to key evidence from email accounts and a computer belonging to close Comey friend and attorney Daniel Richman. U.S. District Judge Colleen Cotter-Cotley, wow, that's a good one, granted a temporary restraining order sought by Richmond's lawyers, requiring that the evidence be sequestered pending a ruling on Richmond's claim that the government illegally retained his emails and other data. Quote, the court concludes that petitioner Richmond is likely to succeed on the merits of his claim that the government has violated his Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable searches and seizures by retaining a complete copy of all files on his personal computer, an image of the computer, and searching that image without warrant. Cotter-Cotley wrote in a 4-page order filed Saturday, one day after Richmond's attorney requested the emergency order. Cotter-Cotley, a Clinton appointee based in Washington, issued the restraining order before getting a formal response from prosecutors to a petition Richmond filed last week seeking return of his data. However, she said a lack of clear indication about who currently has the data and where it is stored supported her conclusions that a temporary order limiting access to the trove of records was warranted. Uncertainty about its whereabouts weighs in favor of acting promptly to preserve the status quo, Cotter-Cotley wrote. Spokespeople for the Justice Department did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Richmond's communications are a central aspect of the case prosecutors are attempting to bring against Comey. A copy of the law professor's personal computer, iCloud account, and Columbia University email accounts were obtained by the Justice Department in 2017, following Trump's firing of Comey as FBI director. Richmond allowed investigators to make an image of his computer during an investigation into an alleged disclosure of classified information. The FBI later obtained other records through search warrants. After the Justice Department charged Comey in September for allegedly lying to Congress about his contacts with the media, Comey's attorneys contended that prosecutors had improperly relied on Richmond's records, some of which may have been have included information protected by attorney-client privilege. Richmond's attorneys have argued that prosecutors' investigators were obliged to return or destroy the data once the initial investigations concluded that the FBI appeared to have examined data not within the scope of its warrants. It's unclear how significant a lack of access to Richmond's records would be for the Justice Department's efforts to re-indict Comey. Investigators would likely have access to some of the emails from other sources. However, Comey's lawyers have already argued that access to Richmond's data tainted the investigation that led to Comey's indictment in September on charges of lying and obstructing a Senate committee. A U.S. Magistrate Judge William Fitzpatrick, who helped manage the Comey case, said the lone grand jury witness, an FBI case agent, may have viewed material that should have been protected, threatening the entire case. The issue was never fully resolved because U.S. District Judge Cameron Curry dismissed the charges against Comey after concluding the lead prosecutor, Lindsay Halligan, was illegally appointed to her position. Still, prosecutors are weighing whether to seek a new grand jury indictment against Comey, and Richmond material could come back into play. Richmond was not charged in the case filed against Comey. No one was charged in earlier investigations. Cotter-Cotley put the dispute over Richmond's data on fast track, ordering the Justice Department to confirm by Monday that it has complied with her order and to respond to Richmond's legal arguments by Tuesday. She did not immediately schedule a hearing on the issue, but said her order limiting access to Richmond's emails and computer files will be in effect through Friday unless she cancels it before then. So that is not going particularly well for the government so far. They are, if they have fruit of the tainted tree, evidence that they are not supposed to use, and they don't have any parallel construction. Parallel construction, for those who don't know, is when you obtain information illicitly, but you do not necessarily use that instance of it, but you then use the knowledge of it to go find something that you can hang the person on. That is parallel construction.
Let me give you an example. Where you plant pipe bombs, but then do not use the information of your knowledge of the pipe bombs, but send somebody to, quote unquote, look for them and, quote unquote, find them in exactly 2 locations and then stop looking, for example.
Well, we have pipe bomber information coming up, Alex, so.
Alrighty.
You will have.
I love them. I love them. Prospective segues.
Yes, unfortunately, oftentimes I will say we have a great tendency for you to say something that actually lends me to have the direct segue into what I was about to bring up. But this time you are at least one article off, so I do have to.
No, this will have to count as a, what was it? In series where something happens that's like a forewarning for the future, but you kind of have to keep track of it. Anyway, whatever. Keep going.
Yes. So the parallel construction is when you obtain things that you aren't supposed to. Governments do it all the time. Police do it all the time. And there's sort of a desire for those who envision themselves as wanting justice to sort of accept that behavior is acceptable, because you want the bad guys, quote unquote, to, get punished, and you don't necessarily want procedural technicalities to ruin a good investigation. But, there are reasons why we have these protections in order. It's because the government is intrusive, and the government will investigate you at all points in time and put pressure on your life. And so we do want the ability to, in some ways, let the guilty go free because of procedural violations, because that's the only way that we can sort of enforce the protection of privacy and freedom overall, conceptually. Now, in this particular case, I'm very, very curious what information would be in Richmond's emails under his capacity as an attorney for Comey that would give him attorney-client privilege that would be directly related to the things that they are trying to get Comey online for, that involve Richmond himself in a different capacity. That would be fascinating, Alex. Imagine you and I were co-conspirators in some sort of crime, but you were also an attorney, and I hired you maybe for a traffic case or something. And in an email, I'm also saying, oh, that other thing we're working on, by the way, like that thing that we're totally doing that we shouldn't be doing and that I just lied about under oath, by the way, that thing also, and then have that email be supposedly covered under attorney-client privilege. I'm wondering what it is. I'm curious, and I don't know if we'll ever find out, but that's like the way this reads to me, right? Like how what could it be that
Yeah, it's I don't know. The big problem is that the people that they're going up against have mastery of the system, right? And I don't think it's an overstatement to say that. Like, they really know all the tools, which means that you need a seriousness and a sort of catch them in the actness, and then on top sort of operating with very high levels of integrity in your own process to get them in trouble. And I don't know. I'm doubtful that the Trump administration has those features, but I'm willing. Hey, I'm open to being convinced that I'm wrong. I would be very happy.
Well, this is somewhat of an unrelated case before we do talk about the pipe bomber information this week. This is unrelated to anything in the U.S., but it is a story that caught my attention, was rather disturbing. From CNN, 4 arrests over alleged international satanic child sex abuse material ring. 4 men have been arrested over their alleged involvement in an international satanic child sex abuse material ring, according to Australian police, who say they're still working to identify the victims. Janie Doherty, commander of the New South Wales Sex Crime Squad, said the 4 men allegedly shared abhorrent content with an international network depicting children from infants to 12 years old, as well as animals. Quote, police will allege in court that this international group were engaged in conversations and sharing a material which depicted child abuse and the torture of children involving symbols and rituals linked to Satanism and the occult, Doherty said Monday. Quote, thousands of videos were found on electronic devices seized during several simultaneous raids on properties in Sydney last week, Doherty said. Quote, amongst these deplorable images were also a number of videos depicting the sexual abuse of animals, she added. Video released by NSW police showed that the arrest of a 26-year-old man in the inner city suburb of Waterloo, whom police alleged have played a leading role in the group. Officers can be seen using a battering ram to enter the apartment and are heard shouting police before taking a man dressed in a zebra print shorts and a t-shirt into custody. The investigation was carried out by the NSW Sex Crime Squad as part of the Strike Force Constantine, an operation established in April that investigates the online distribution of child sex abuse involving ritualistic or satanic themes. In November, that's a very specific operation. In November, police were made aware of a group of men in Sydney who are allegedly part of a larger international pedophile syndicate. They were, quote, communicating with each other and also sharing explicit child abuse material across the international group, Daugherty alleged. Police could not confirm the identities of the children involved or which country the material was created in. Quote, we've not identified an actual child, but the images are of real children, she said, which is a statement that prior to the AI, you wouldn't really necessarily have to add as a claim. Police executed 6 search warrants across Sydney last week and arrested 4 men, according to police statement. The 26-year-old was charged with several offenses, including making available child abuse material and possession of child abuse material. He was also charged with disseminating and possessing bestiality material, police said. 3 men, aged 46, 42, and 39, were arrested in the coastal suburb of Malabar in connection with the same child abuse network. They face several charges relating to the possession or distribution of child abuse material. All 4 men, who have not been named by police, were refused bail and will appear in court in January next year. Police are combing through thousands of files to investigate whether alleged members of the group suspected of sharing images on encrypted international platforms, whether other alleged members. The abuse was particularly devastating in that they used symbols and rituals around it in discussions that they were having about abusing children. They said it was a very ritualistic overview. So that is the disturbing story that I was bringing in here before we talk about the pipe bomber, because it did mention that there was some sort of international component to it. And probably the way that it's, stated in here, it's not simply that they're using the internet and happen to be conspiring with people across the globe, that there is some component to it that is an act of coordination with people that outside of just, internet connectivity. I'm not sure, of course, by the article. That's all I know. But
you're still hoping that Podesta is somehow snared.
Yeah, it's clearly Podesta related. All things are connected. Everything is intertwined. I did find it particularly interesting that the unit investigating this was very, very hyper specific to sex crimes involving people who involved satanic and ritualistic imagery. Like, okay, so it's just not the crime itself. It's also the sort of religious theme behind the crime. Like, that's okay. Very strange. I guess religious would be the way that you would describe that. So, yeah, that's particularly odd there. I don't know if there's anything else to add.
Your pipe bomber analysis, Gator.
Well, we have some pipe bomber news. The first thing I'm going to do is, Alex, do you recall that there was a news story circulating several months ago about a pending sort of pipe bomber arrest / discovery, right? Or an allegation that was floating around prior to this?
I remember the Blaze story. Is that the one you mean, or something else?
Yes. I'm referring to the Blaze story.
That wasn't a month ago. That was a few weeks ago, I think.
The timeline on it is not necessarily fresh in my memory. It was just, earlier than today, right?
No,
but
because it was how close it is to today. It was actually kind of rough.
Yeah. So in my mind, it was like a month or two ago, which could have been, measured in weeks or depending your memory floats. But it was very, very recent that this story came out. And the Blaze was started by Glenn Beck, something on the order of a decade ago. And he had opened his show on Friday reacting to the arrest, because this arrest clearly goes against the narrative of that story. The narrative of that story was that there was some female law enforcement officer who they were claiming was the culprit based off of gait analysis, meaning the stride, her walk, that law enforcement experts in the know and in the chain somehow had made this identification. They weren't on the record. They were all anonymously sourced, which my concerns over that practice. But the Blaze does not necessarily have a strong history of completely botching stories like this. So the degree to which this was them honestly reporting what they were being told by numerous law enforcement officers not off the record, but anonymously, would indicate whether or not they could be considered a sloppy or trustworthy news source, in general. There are plenty of other large organizations that have done similar faux pas. So it doesn't one mistake doesn't necessarily indict an entire organization. But Glenn Beck opened his show on Friday responding to such things and giving somewhat of a synopsis of the current story. So I want to play the way that he introduced it, because he does also broach the topic of the bad story.
Hello, Stu. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Glenn. How's it going?
I don't even know what to say, because I don't know what's true anymore. I have no idea what's true anymore. I can tell you what I think is true, but I don't know what's true. 5 years we have been looking into this pipe bomber. For 5 years, the FBI. For 5 years, the FBI has said, no, can't find anything. We don't have any cell phone data. It's all been erased. We don't have any kind of data whatsoever. It's all been erased accidentally. We don't have. The Secret Service brings the vice president about to be sworn in, brings her practically at the bench of the pipe bomb, but accidentally we accidentally erased all of the Secret Service notes on it. Really? 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 For 5 years, this has been going on. For the last year, we have the people who have been saying, don't trust the government. They're now in the government, and they're saying, trust us. And generally speaking, I do. And there's a couple of people, Pam Bondi is one of them, that I'm not sure yet, because I haven't seen anything. Where are you, Pam? Where are you? On any big thing, where are you? So yesterday, they come out and they say, we've arrested apparently the pipe bomber. Okay. We're indicting him. Okay, so they're a suspect. We don't know. But, I've got a lot of questions on this one. I mean, a lot of questions. Let's start here. Let me just give you the story. On Thursday, the DOJ announced that a 30-year-old Brian Cole Jr. of Woodbridge, Virginia, had been arrested. Cole lives with his mom and his other family members and works in the office of a bail bondsman, according to an FBI affidavit. Today's arrest happened because Trump administration had made this case a priority. At a press conference alongside with Attorney General Pam Bondi, FBI Director Kash Patel, FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino, and others, Janine Pirro, U.S. Attorney, revealed that Cole was arrested for allegedly transporting an explosive device in an interstate commerce and attempted malicious destruction by means of explosive materials. Citing the ongoing investigation, officials shared few details about the sequence of events that led to Cole's arrest, but they insist that the evidence against Cole was not based on any new tip. Okay. Just old-fashioned detective work. We've got Sam Spade on the job now. This wasn't a new tip, wasn't some new evidence. It was just hard work. Today's arrest happened because the Trump administration, this is what happened when you work for a president who tells you to get the bad guys and stop focusing on other things not related to law enforcement. Well, good. Bondi further claimed that under the Biden administration, the evidence was sitting there collecting dust. Bondi further claimed that under the Biden administration, the evidence was just sitting there collecting dust. Do you believe that? Yeah, I do. I can believe that. Such total lack of movement during 4 years under Biden undermined the public trust for enforcement agencies. Absolutely. Patel indicated that Cole is believed to have made the bombs. Bondi stated he was charged with placing them at the RNC. Officials reiterated that further charges may still be forthcoming and that the investigation is still in its early stages. The FBI affidavit dated December 3rd revealed more details about the evidence against Mr. Cole. Investigators were able to link materials used in the bombs, including galvanized pipes, end caps, wires, 9-bolt battery connectors, and kitchen-style timers, as well as other items that may have been used during the construction process, such as wire nuts, safety glasses, and sandpaper, to purchases made by Cole. Now, here's an interesting thing. A cell phone connected to Cole also pinged off multiple cell towers near the RNC and DNC during the time the bombs were believed to have been placed. Stu, a cell phone connected to Cole also pinged off multiple cell towers near the RNC, DNC during the time that the bombs were placed. Why would I have a hard time with that paragraph?
Well, I mean, maybe it goes back to what you started this with, which was that we were told all the data was deleted and lost. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
All of the cell phone data has been corrupted. There is no cell phone pings that you can find. It's all been corrupted. I'd like to know, when did they uncorrupt the corrupted information? How did they do that? Where has that been sitting? Kind of an important detail that I'd like to know. At 7:10 on January 5th, a Nissan Sentra registered to Cole was likewise observed less than 1/2 mile from the location where the individual who placed the devices was first observed on foot. At 7:10, observation of Cole's vehicle became 5 minutes before the cell phone began to interact with provider towers in the area. Wow, so now they have footage and the cell phone tower pinging. Wow. Cole's height and use of sunglasses also seems to correspond with the suspect spotted on surveillance footage. November 8th, Blaze News investigation, confirmed by several intelligence sources, reported that a gait analysis of a former Capitol police officer was a forensic match to the gait of the long-sought January 6th pipe bomb suspect. An attorney for the Capitol police officer has since denied the allegations on her behalf. CBS News reported the FBI ruled her involvement out, citing 3 unidentified sources who said there was a video of her playing with puppies at the time. Oh, she was playing with puppies at the time. Now, I'm not saying she wasn't playing with puppies at the time. I don't know what to believe in this story. But can it be something else other than playing, just so it doesn't seem like a ridiculous movie that we would all be watching and going, really, the puppy thing? She was playing with puppies at the time. Most likely that's exactly what happened. I don't know her. I just can't take the puppy thing. Now, Blaze News issued this yesterday. Blaze News considers fairness and accuracy to be the defining goals of any news organization. Our report, posted on November 8th, 2025, about the January 6 pipe bombs was based on sourcing from individuals in position to know this type of sensitive law enforcement information who have demonstrated a record of reliability and accuracy. Of note, the sources continue to stand by the information they provided to Blaze News. What? At all times, the reporting adhered to professional journalistic standards and was published with good faith belief in its truth. Even so, in light of Thursday's development and the FBI's address of another individual, Virginia resident Brian Gold Jr., in connection with the Capitol pipe bomb incident, we consider the values of fairness and accuracy to require retraction of this article. Even so, in light of Thursday. So they retracted the article, and they believe it was published in good faith, but the people who are the sources stand by it. Just to make it, can we throw some puppies in someplace? How about some little kitty cats? Can we play with little kitty cats? Just to make it even more fun, yet thoroughly confusing. After publication, Steve Bunnell, who was Washington Post, identified as an attorney for the Capitol police officer, told the Post his client categorically denies that she planted the pipe bombs. Good. I would just like an end to this story. That's all I would like. I just want an ending to this story. No. I would like the true ending to this story. That's what I want. Because I don't know what to believe on any story anymore. I am so glad that I am out of the news business. You know, I started the Blaze years ago. I sold the Blaze 2 years ago. And I am so glad I have nothing to do with anyone in the news department. Not that I don't trust anybody in the news. I wouldn't want anyone in any news department. I wouldn't want to be in God's news department right now. I want out. I want out. I just want the truth.
Now, Glenn had talked about this cell phone data being corrupted, so I wanted to go back and try to find what this story was there. And I pulled up from the Washington Examiner, phone location data on January 5th pipe bomb may have been corrupted, FBI official. A former top FBI official said the Bureau's efforts to catch the unidentified suspect who planted pipe bombs the night before the Capitol riot may have been hampered by geolocation data from one cell phone provider being corrupted. FBI Director Christopher Wray claimed in February that he had, quote, total confidence in the team investigating the pipe bombs that were placed outside of the Republican and Democratic National Headquarters on January 5th, 2021, despite no arrest being made and the suspect remaining unknown and at large, even with the suspect's gender remaining a mystery. Stephen D'Antonio, the former assistant director in charge of the FBI's Washington field office who left the Bureau in late 2022, told the GOP-led House Judiciary Committee earlier this month that the FBI, quote, did a complete geofence of the area in an attempt to identify the bomber, meaning the FBI likely obtained warrants aimed at locating cellular devices based on signals such as Wi-Fi, GPS, Bluetooth, and other pings off of cell phone towers. D'Antonio initially told the committee, according to newly released excerpts, that, quote, we have complete data before immediately backtracking and admitting that the data were not complete because some of the data was corrupted by one of the providers. He said the data wasn't purposely corrupted by the provider, calling it an unusual circumstance that we have corrupt data from one of the providers. He said, I can't remember right now which provider it was. The former FBI official admitted it was possible that the corrupted data may have held the key to identifying the suspect, saying it was, quote, awful because we don't have that information to search. Quote, so it could have been that provider? Yeah, with our luck, with this investigation, it probably was, right? D'Antonio said. Quote, maybe if we did have that, the data wasn't corrupted and it wasn't purposely corrupted. I don't want any conspiracy theories, right? To my knowledge, it wasn't corrupted, but that could have been good information that we don't have, right? So it's painful for us to not have that, so we looked at everything. The new information was revealed in a letter to Wray, led by the House Committee's chairman, Representative Jim Jordan. Jordan and his 3 House GOP co-signers told Wray, quote, Mr. D'Antonio's testimony provided new information about the FBI's investigation into the pipe bombs and reinforces our concerns about the FBI's handling of this matter, and that the testimony, quote, raises concerns about the FBI's handling of the pipe bomb investigation. The FBI has failed to respond to the committee's request for a briefing regarding the investigation. The FBI announced this January that the Bureau was offering a combined reward up to $500,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the attempted pipe bomber. An FBI webpage features a host of details about the suspect, including multiple videos of the would-be bomber and a map of the route the person took the night of January 5th. The dual bomb threats were neutralized by authorities on January 6th, but the identity of the suspect remains one of the biggest mysteries stemming from the events surrounding the Capitol riot. So that was part of the article. I don't think I need to go further to get the point of what he was discussing. So to the degree that there was partial corruption, it doesn't mean that all the data was corrupted and that there was nothing that was still uncorrupted to siphon, but that was where that idea was originating from him. I just wanted to make sure that we could get that detail in there since he made a large mention of it. Alex, do you have any thoughts so far?
I don't know how skeptical you are of this recent discovery, but if you've looked at all at the sort of things that they are basing their accusation on, it I have the
affidavit that's been floating around that gives the details that I'm going to read in a little bit. Yeah,
it seems exceedingly thin, like very, very circumstantial. Though the suspect supposedly has confessed, I believe, and the Blaze has retracted their story or something along those lines. But I don't know. I've been following some people who have been following the story, so I'm not like myself deep into the evidence. But the people who have been following the story are exceptionally dubious, especially to do with the, somehow Antifa is involved as well. Like, okay, whatever.
What angle was that you're referring to?
What do you mean?
That Antifa is involved?
Apparently, there's some that they're attaching the arrestee to Antifa somehow.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I have that in an article somewhere. I must have missed that as I was scanning the articles.
I'll look for something. If not, I'll correct it.
Okay. So yeah, I don't necessarily have any strong feelings yet. The pipe bomb. I know that Mike Benz was on sort of the pipe bomb kick for a long time, right? I think when he did his Joe Rogan appearance, there was a segment of him talking about the pipe bomb thing. Or was it Mike Benz or was it Dan Beatty? There have been people in sort of the alt space near people like Mike Benz who have been talking about the pipe bomb suspect for a long time, because it is one of those things where two places in particular, the future vice president was actually, nearby in proximity to the pipe bomb at a particularly sensitive moment, right? Like, so it wasn't found and discarded. Like it's my understanding that the vice president was actually in proximity to these things, and standard security procedures would have sort of made, looking outside for threats something that would have been done, sweeping the area, just, the way I naively think things are done. I don't know. Sloped roofs are also problematic in this day and age. So what do I know about security? But the idea that we live in such a environment where, and as we have stories later in the stack go, that it's increasingly a literal panopticon where all the data about where you are is tracked pretty much constantly, that we have cameras everywhere that the government can subpoena at all times to see, like, just ring cameras on people's doors, outside cameras outside everyone's houses. They can pull up at pretty much at any point in time to try to get a visual picture of what's happening. And here in Washington, D.C., one of the most secure places because of the people who frequent there, right? It's the nation's capital, and the RNC and the DNC headquarters are just these places where it's hard to figure out who's there. We really just don't know, and we definitely don't have the surveillance network in the area where all of the government is to to be able to find this thing. It winds up being confusing and suspect right there. It's just it does not make sense. I mean, even having fake cell phone towers that cell phones ping to that the government owns sounds like something they would do. Right? Like having the CIA and the FBI do that stuff all the time to get people to accidentally connect to their cell phone towers so that they can snoop in on the conversations that go through there. So why wouldn't they have sort of the ability to determine the devices that are around those things? They baffles me. All right, I'm rambling a little bit here, but you get my point, Alex. Like the things that we claim we can't do when in other circumstances we seem to be able to do them just fine. those always catch my eye a little bit.
Yeah, it's this incredible selective competence, right? Where there's all these like mysteries that if only we knew. When it is announced, it is admitted and known fact that the NSA is tracking most of the internet, and it's like, oh, if only we knew the emails that Epstein was sending, and it's like, yes, we could. I mean, they have this information. This exists somewhere in Utah. They know, okay, but somehow we have to wait for the estate of Epstein to have a trove of emails that they're releasing and yada yada and whatever and. Yeah, it is all very complicated for my little brain to hold. But, to my knowledge, all of the surveillance data has never directly been used to actually solve, some mystery that we, actually care about, which is fascinating.
Well, I mean, when it comes to the surveillance that they're not supposed to do, that they occasionally accidentally admit to under pressure, that stuff I kind of yet they do have, to some degree, I'm not saying that they obey it, but to some degree, when they do that massive surveillance, they're like allowed to collect it. They compartmentalize what they're allowed to do. So they're allowed to collect it, but they're not allowed to look at it. And they're only allowed to look at it with the correct authorization so that they can pretend that they're doing all these things legitimately, et cetera, et cetera. And so in order to turn it into a routine source of criminal investigation, sort of gives the game away, because at some point you have to present this information and how you came about it. And when you are getting it from the sources that you're not supposed to be getting it from, like we just talked about, then it's, it's fruit from the poison tree, right? It's you're not supposed to have it there. So you have to do parallel construction pretty much all the time, even when you have the information, because you got it from sort of an illicit source. You did violate Fourth Amendment rights everywhere. So I do kind of understand why it's not routinely used. But even in this sense, we're not talking about the massive spy apparatus. We're just talking about the normal things that we know they do and that they get warrants for all the time, right? Like if they are the middleman, right? The CIA, the FBI, they set up companies all the time in order to collect information or engage in business in order to collect intelligence, right? So they're getting that information during the course of business, which is not requiring of them of a warrant, right? Like all of these things they do. Having a cell phone tower where they're allowing people's cell phones to connect and ping to it because they're using it in order to determine the cell phones in the proximity sounds like something to me that, unless I'm mistaken, there's nothing stopping them from doing.
I mean, on some level, if they haven't done this around Washington, D.C., it would constitute negligence. I mean, if you kind of want to know if there's one place, on in the country that you kind of want to know who's coming around, even for retrospective look-sees, is probably that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. Look, for me, there is a kind of a smoking gun that a lot of people who are following the story, I kind of alluded to it right before, that are focusing on that. Just if this indeed was the person who planted the bombs, makes no sense, which is that the people that found said bombs apparently and I might not be getting the smoking gun exactly correct, because as I said, I'm not deeply steeped in the story, but apparently what they did is they came out of their car, they found a bomb or two bombs, or maybe it's like one of the patrols. They found a bomb in like 11 minutes by looking at exactly two places where the pipe bomber had stopped the previous day, and then left. Like they immediately without any doubt whether there was another bomb that had been placed or whatever. They just, as soon as they found the two bombs were found, everybody stopped looking, because somehow magically it almost is like they knew that how many there were. Mm-hmm. And that sort of coincidence is galling to me. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's what makes me extremely suspicious of, like, oh, we did some massive data mining and we found somebody who had bought pipes over the duration of 2 years, and somehow has then bought also what the stuff that
I have it here, so I'll go over what they're
possibly alleging. Bought some wires at some point. By the way, sorry, just to wrap up the Antifa connection that people have been speculating about. Apparently, this person is quote unquote an anarchist, and this is somehow being attached to this whole story. Right? Okay. I added a thing to the space to that effect.
All right. So this is the affidavit in support of a criminal complaint against the individual that they picked up. I'm special agent with the FBI and have been employed since 2009. I am an investigative or law enforcement officer of the United States within the meaning of Title 18 United States Code Section 2510. That is, an officer of the United States who is empowered by law to conduct investigations of and to make arrests for offenses enumerated in Section yada yada. As an FBI special agent, I have received extensive training in a variety of investigations of federal, state, and law. During my employment with the FBI, I have participated in mainly international and domestic terrorism investigations. These investigations have given me experience in preparing and assisting in the preparation of court orders and search warrant applications. Additionally, during the course of these and other investigations, I have also conducted and participated in physical and electronic surveillance assisted in the execution of search and arrest warrants, debriefed informants, interviewed witnesses and suspects, and reviewed other pertinent records. This affidavit is being submitted in support of a criminal complaint alleging that Brian... zoomed in too close. Brian Cole Jr. has transported in interstate commerce. Now, Alex, I want to point out here, Brian Cole Jr. has transported in interstate commerce. Now, that line I'm pointing out to you right now because I have many times pointed out that anytime you want to know how the federal government got involved, you are almost always going to find an interstate commerce mentioned, because it is not necessarily that things that you think should be crimes wind up being crimes at the federal level. It has to involve them getting an in somewhere where the federal government has claim on something. And interstate commerce is almost always that sort of that hook, right? So it's not planting bombs that is the crime. It is the interstate commerce that allows them to to do that. And I just want to point out that's what we have here so that people can keep track that this claim that I made is always coming true here. So transported in interstate commerce and explosive with the knowledge or intent that it will be used to kill, injure, or intimidate any individual or unlawfully to damage or destroy any building, vehicle, or other real or personal property in violation of statute, and has maliciously damaged and destroyed and attempted to damage and destroy by means of fire and explosive materials the headquarters of the Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committee of Washington, D.C. This affidavit is based on my personal knowledge, information provided to me by and through other law enforcement agents, law enforcement records, Rule 41 search warrants, witness interviews, and my training and experience, as well as my training and experience of other law enforcement agents. Because this affidavit is being submitted for the limited purpose of establishing probable cause in support of a criminal complaint, I have not included each and every fact known to me or concerning this investigation. I have only set forth the facts that I believe are necessary to establish probable cause. At approximately 1 p.m. on January 6, 2021, multiple law enforcement agencies received reports of a suspected improvised explosive device within the vicinity of the headquarters of the Republican National Committee. At approximately 1:15 p.m. on the same day, a second suspected IED was reported just a few blocks away in the vicinity of the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee. And there you go, Alex. Within 15 minutes, the two things were both found. That's sort of the point you were making, that just these two devices both found at the same time. It's like, oh, look, this thing that we totally put here was discovered, right? Like almost like a coordinated sort of event was. But also idea,
immediately after they found these two things, I mean, let's put it the opposite way, right? If two pipe bombs have been discovered within 15 minutes, what would your next action be? And if you knew nothing, right? You're like, we found one, we found another. Like, what do we do next?
Yeah.
Do we perhaps like put even more people to look for even more pipe bombs? Because like, apparently the place is like filled with them. I don't know.
Right.
The
RNC and DNC are national organizations that engage in activities on a national level on behalf of their respective political parties, including the solicitation of donations from individuals outside of Washington, D.C., just in case the people reading this weren't aware. The headquarters of each organization is used in interstate commerce. I love this. And an activity affecting interstate commerce. Alex, I will never get over the peppering of that language required everywhere in order to justify the law existing and being used.
Look, the fact of the matter is that what we are conducting right now is in fact interstate commerce. So.
Shit. The Hazardous Devices section of the United States Capitol Police responded and performed a render safe procedure on both devices. Subsequently, the FBI assessed that the two devices were both IEDs, which contained a main explosive charge, a fusing system, and a container. The FBI also assessed that the IEDs used a hard metal container, metal pipe nipples and end caps, which showed that the weapon characteristics were present. The FBI recovered the components of the disrupted devices. These components were processed as evidence and submitted to the FBI laboratory for analysis. The FBI laboratory issued a report regarding the two devices, opining that the submitted items consisted of two disrupted destructive devices and that the use of a hard metal container showed the weapon characteristics were present. The IED were both of a kind more commonly known as pipe bombs. Both IEDs were manufactured using a collection of component parts and main explosive charges. The component parts included a 1-inch by 8-inch pipe, end caps affixed to the pipe, 14-gauge electrical wire in red and black, alligator clips, I am not involved, to connect the wires, a 9-volt battery, a 9-volt battery connector, a white kitchen timer, paper clips, steel wool, and homemade black powder. Review of video surveillance footage from the evening of January 5th, 2021 shows that the pipe bombs at the RNC and DNC were placed by the same individual. The individual was observed on video surveillance footage at various locations in the surrounding neighborhood between approximately 7:34 p.m. and 8:18 p.m. In video surveillance, the individual was wearing dark pants, a gray hooded sweatshirt, dark gloves, Nike Air Max Speed Turf shoes, and a face mask that obscured the person's face. The video surveillance footage shows the individual adjusting eyeglasses at times. The video surveillance footage shows the individual carrying a backpack. Video footage shows the individual traveling on foot through the surrounding neighborhood of the RNC and DNC, including portions of the route of travel between the two locations. Through video surveillance, the FBI recreated the individual's path of travel, including timestamps associated with the individual's location along the route. The individual placed the pipe bomb at the DNC at approximately 7:54 p.m. and at the RNC at approximately 8:16 p.m. on January 5th. In January 2021, the FBI conducted a reverse projection photogrammetry examination. That's
photogrammetry. That's the
Yeah, I know it. I just that as I was approaching that word, it was like, no, you are not going to get it as you attempt it right now. Sorry, sir. Keep trying. That's so. It was like, wait a second, these syllables are not computing. Of the individual depicted in the video surveillance footage, the height analysis showed that the approximate distance from the ground to the top of the individual's head, including headwear, was at 5 feet 7 inches with an error rate of plus or minus 1.1 inches. Brian Cole Jr. is a 30-year-old resident of Woodbridge, Virginia. Cole is 5 foot 6 inches tall, and Cole wears corrective eyeglasses. Cole lives in a single-family house with his mother and other family members. Cole works in an office of a bail bondsman in North Virginia. The FBI has identified 1 bank checking account and 6 credit cards used by Cole. The FBI obtained records for the checking account and 3 credit cards for the time period January 2018 to January 2021. 3 additional credit cards were obtained for the time period of January 2018 to November 2025. The FBI reviewed the transaction history of these accounts. During 2019 and 2020, Cole purchased multiple items consistent with the components that were used to manufacture the pipe bombs. Placed at the RNC and DNC, Cole used the accounts to purchase these items from physical retail locations in Northern Virginia, as described in detail below. Both pipe bombs were manufactured using by 1x8 galvanized pipe with markings consistent with particular manufacturer product labeling. Cole purchased a total of 6 galvanized pipes of this size and shape on or about June 1st to June 8th and November 16th, 2020. The purchases were made at 2 different Home Depot locations in Northern Virginia. According to the pipe manufacturer, approximately 26,000 of these items from pipe manufacturer were sold in 2020, and over 22,000 of these items were sold to Home Depot. Both pipe bombs were manufactured using end caps, which were used to close the ends of the 8-inch pipe. The pipe bombs were placed outside the RNC and DNC, contained a mix of both black and galvanized end caps. The end caps had markings consistent with pipe manufacturer's product labeling. Cole purchased a total of 12 black end caps and 2 galvanized end caps from the 4 different Home Depots in Northern Virginia on or about the following dates: October 22nd, 2019, March 10th, June 20th, July 8th, and November 16th. According to the, this is all 2020. According to the pipe manufacturer, approximately 233,000 of the black end caps from the pipe manufacturer were distributed in 2020, including to Home Depot. In addition, approximately 179,000 galvanized end caps from pipe manufacturer were distributed in 2020. So as this goes on, the circumstantial sort of evidence from his purchasing history starts to say, well, he purchased all the components that we have determined have been, made to use this. Now, of note, Alex, here in some of this discovery, is that these purchases that they're mentioning are all throughout roughly 2019, with occasional purchases also being included in November of 2020. So the question that arises, right, is this circumstantial one, right, where he purchased these things from time to time for unrelated purposes, right, and he just so happened to be again purchasing similar items that were included in November, or two, when you see the reports that he was doing this because he was upset about the election, as was reported by various outlets, that he thought the election was stolen from Trump. Why was he doing this supposed pre-planning if we assume that the 2019 is indicative of him having the motivation to build these devices? Why was he pre-planning the stolen election in 2019?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he had a time machine at this point. It is all very look, okay. Here's the steel man, which is that he wasn't pre-planning. He just used stuff that he had lying around to conduct his sort of operation, so to speak. That would be the I think the story that you could construct. I don't know. Yeah.
So that's effectively what the purchasing stuff goes on to say. But now we have his location information. There was more information about the stuff he purchased, but I'm going to skip that because those details are just additive to the same effect. They don't really help us, gain more insight. The FBI obtained historical cell site records associated with cell towers located in the immediate vicinity of the RNC and DNC for the relevant time period on January 5th, 2021. Historical cell site records associated with cell towers provide location data for cellular telephones at specific points in time when the cell phone engages in a transaction with the cell phone tower. Such transactions can include voice calls, text messages, or other data. Transactions involving data usage can include a user's active use of a cell phone, example, navigation to a web page, and during a user's passive use of a phone, such as when an application on the phone refreshes data in the background. Phone records obtained from the cell phone provider that provides service to the Cole cell phone included historical cell site records associated with the location of devices on the provider's network on January 5th, 2021. Provider's records included location data for devices on its network that engaged in transactions including voice calls, text messages, and other data. Each of the provider's cell phone towers in the vicinity of the RNC and DNC have sectors that provide coverage for the particular tower. Each sector of a cell phone tower provides approximately 120 degrees of coverage. Due to real-world conditions and various forms of interference, the actual coverage on any particular day for a particular sector can extend beyond 120 degrees of coverage or be limited to less than 120 degrees of coverage. For each cell phone tower, providers' historical cell site records show the particular sector that engaged in each transaction for each individual cell phone. The FBI Cellular Analysis Survey Team has analyzed the location of Cole's cell phone on January 5th, 2021. Provider records show that the Cole cell phone connection with provider cell phone tower is consistent with the Cole cell phone being in the area of the RNC and DNC on January 5th, 2021. The Cole cell phone engaged in approximately 7 data session transactions with provider towers between 7:39 and 8:24 p.m. Provider's historical cell site data shows the specific towers for each of the transactions, along with the sector of the tower that engaged the transaction with the Cole cell phone. The 7 transactions between Cole cell phone and provider towers occurred at approximately 7:39 and 7:44 p.m., 7:59 p.m., 8:14, 8:23, and 8:24 p.m. 2 transactions took place at 7:39. During this time period, the Cole cell phone had transactions with 5 sectors of provider cell phone. So now, Alex, going back to this data disruption and this idea that, or the data corruption and this idea that we've, had been on this case for 5 years. The question comes to, was this the provider that the data was corrupted from, or was this not? So if it wasn't, then we've had this information for a long time. And if we had, done sort of a set intersection sort of analysis where we say, okay, these are the cell phones that we have in the area at the time from the appropriate sectors. These are this is the footage of the cars that we have. These are the owners of the vehicles etc. This is the intersection of that piece of information, giving us a narrower set of possible subjects to focus on, etc., etc. With that sort of dwindling intersection of set analysis, we would have identified a core suspect of individuals such that getting a subpoena for sort of, credit card transactions and such should have been a faster process, right? Not requiring 5 years of work, right?
Oh yeah, they don't really say anything that would have been new to them right now, right? I mean, Pirro, I don't know if you saw her press conference, but it was pitiful. She's like, there was millions of data points involved. It's like actively, like, what did they do?
There may be millions of data points involved, but the point is that you're not looking at each of them individually, right? You're using a computer.
You don't know that. You don't. Pirro may have gone to each individual data point and be like, you talk right now, Mister.
like yes. Alex, have you ever looked at a WAV file, an audio file on your computer?
Yeah, that's millions, quadrillions even.
Well, there's the standard WAV file from a compact disc is 44,100 such data points per channel. Okay, and there's two channels.
Giving them ideas. Stop it right now.
All right, now that's per second. Okay, because I just want to point out that those are data points, Alex. Okay. So anyway, that's
know that if we now start hearing them using audio resolution as a way to point out the number of data points they inherited, I will be pinning this on you.
Okay, I understand. Well, it's an impressive quantification, right? It makes them look really, really serious and have a really difficult job. I mean, look, if someday there is a story that I will tell about stuff I've been involved in for the last couple of years that has involved me to do an exceptional amount of open source investigation. Okay, like an incredible amount. And if I show you the graph database that I have of connective pieces of information to track someone who has created like 50 different LLCs and S corporations to sort of, intertwine them as shell companies in order to engage in fraudulent behavior. And then the number of times that they have moved locations and changed their PO boxes and things like that. Graph databases that track all this information. It would make me look like that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia GIF that people, pass around, which, has the web connected that it's Pepe Silvi, you look like an insane person when you stare at this information because there is a massive web, but ultimately you're organizing it because you're gathering it. And therefore the amount of it, yes, is fascinating, but you're organizing it for a purpose, right? So you are making the connections and it's no longer just some large abstract quantity of information.
Oh, but Gator, I've got you beat, one time I downloaded a high resolution JPEG.
Ooh.
There.
Ooh.
Billions.
All right. So, shitting on the nomenclature here that they use to impress people. So that's effectively like I'm not reading the entire thing because all of the individual details are not that important, but I'm giving you the picture here. This is what's included in this probable cause thing. So the data that they have has done what I've just described. It's an intersection of pieces of information that start to narrow down an individual, and they're saying that this is the guy we believe did it. Now, again, why is this only now coming after 5 years? Because it sounds like all of this information, with the exception of getting a warrant to get the purchase information, was readily available to them within days of these events, right? Cameras being able to track cars, cell phone data, etc. So with the exception of the story that I read saying that some of the data was possibly corrupted, a question being, was this part of the data and somehow they recovered it, which is where Glenn Beck said he kind of wanted to know. I'm kind of there too. I'd like to know that information. So that sort of closes out the pipe bomb story, Alex. If you have any other thoughts on that.
No, it's just excessively depressive how the new FBI leadership is somehow managing to exceed the old FBI leadership in, I don't know, tomfoolery. Like, there's a word here about, sort of pretending to be both competent and incompetent in very, strategic doses that are,
yeah. So let me give them
plausible. Let's put it that way.
Let me give them a benefit of the doubt sort of take here, just because I am very cynical, but I don't want to be as maximally cynical as possible. Let's say that their flaw is that they are motivated in a positive direction, but when it comes to their PR, they are largely incompetent. So let's say that their internal organization is actually far better. They are focused on the right things and they are doing good investigative work, but that the way that they communicate and display things to the public is constantly botched because they absolutely have no idea what they're doing when it comes to managing the PR aspects. I could understand and sort of accept that. But I think, though, given that this administration is supposed to be comprised of a whole bunch of media savvy people as being part of their resume, that they should understand the audience that they are largely communicating to, which would be people who would support them if they did it, if they, announce these things correctly, and that they should have a better taste of what those people are looking for and have a sense of style and presentation when they do these things. Now, Kash Patel, as seen in his handling of the Charlie Kirk, assassination situation, sort of did a live tweeting event, which to some degree is a level of appreciated transparency. But as we know, there were some twists and turns that day as the story went on that sent people for a lot of curves, right? Like it was throwing a lot of curveballs at people where all of a sudden you're doing a whole 90 degree or 180 degree turn on a piece of detail that you thought an hour ago was true because you're sort of getting these live updates and some of them are of, let's say, low confidence and they're being treated with higher confidence than they were. And then there's the opposite, end of that, where if he didn't do that, and we're just sitting here in perfect silence while they're waiting before they make an official thing, we feel like they're not doing anything. So, I'm going to give them a little bit of grace in their public handling, but I think, if you were to say that there is a significant lacking when they do make these announcements in the details that they're giving, I think they could do a lot better in anticipating questions people would have and giving those answers.
Look, I'm not the one to give the feds their benefit of the doubt, but I will say that there is a deeper problem here when it comes to the intersection of the justice system and the media ecosystem, because you see a lot of this where there's gag orders, there's this supposed pretend situation where you're supposed to have a jury of your peers and your peers are supposed to be unbiased. And somehow this has transmuted into the fact that information about the trial should not come out too early, while at the same time, you've got, all the awesome sleuths out there putting together, some pretty compelling stories. So, somehow the strategy of like keeping the information you have to yourself and sending gag orders to witnesses, for example, if you're the FBI, starting to sound like suicidal. You know what I mean? Like it's there needs to be a much deeper reworking of how that whole nexus operates, because right now it's a recipe for disaster. Like you're literally saying like, yeah, we're not, everything we touch and everything we have, you're not going to have access to, but free speech, go ahead and connect any dots you want to connect. And maybe when the trial happens, if the evidence becomes available, you'll know what happened. Like, or what we think happened anyway. That's bad enough if the FBI or whatever is unbiased and uncorrupted and, the perfect Boy Scouts. And then it gets progressively worse from there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, unless you have anything else there, Alex, on the pipe bomb case, I think we'll move on because we have plenty more on the stack today. Oh boy. Alex, we have from FT. We have U.S. halts plans to sanction Chinese spy agency. The U.S. has halted plans to impose sanctions on China's Ministry of State Security over a massive cyber espionage campaign in order to avoid derailing the trade truce Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping struck in October. Current and former U.S. officials said plans to impose sanctions on the spy agency and contractors it is allegedly using to conduct a hacking campaign against U.S. telecom networks called Salt Typhoon were put on hold to avoid undermining the U.S.-China détente. The administration would also not enact major new export controls against China following the deal reached in the South Korean city of Busan, said several U.S. officials and others familiar with the situation. Several people said the goal of the White House's China policy had shifted to ensuring stability until the U.S. reduces China's dominance in rare earths, which has hamstrung its ability to take aggressive actions. Trump also does not want to jeopardize his visit to Beijing in April. But the decision to not impose sanctions over Salt Typhoon, which has successfully targeted the unencrypted communications of top U.S. officials, has sparked frustration among China hawks in the government who think Trump is sacrificing national security for trade deals. The administration appeared to be giving ground on export controls in order to secure President Trump's trip to Beijing and buy time to diversify critical mineral reliance away from China, said Zach Cooper, an Asia security expert at the American Enterprise Institute. I worry that this is simply concessions masquerading as strategy. In another move that has triggered concern among China hawks, the administration is preparing to hold a high-level meeting to decide whether to provide licenses to allow NVIDIA to export the H200, an advanced chip, to China, said people briefed on the situation. Ahead of the October summit with Xi, Trump had suggested that he might let NVIDIA sell an even more advanced chip called Blackwell to China, but his advisors convinced him not to make that decision. In recent weeks, the administration has bolstered China policy coordination by tasking Stephen Miller, Deputy White House Chief of Staff, with ensuring that departments do not take actions that could threaten the détente, said two people briefed with development. Miller was given the role after Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent complained he had been blindsided by a White House memo that raised concerns about Alibaba, the Chinese tech group. The Financial Times has first reported the existence of this memo. The memo, which was based on declassified intelligence, said Alibaba was supporting Chinese military operations targeting the U.S. The company strongly rejected the claims. Treasury and the White House did not comment on the decision to halt planned sanctions on the MSS. But one person familiar with the White House's thinking said Trump was committed to ushering mutually beneficial trade relations with China without compromising on our national and economic security. The administration's rigorous export controls regime, including on state-of-the-art Blackwell chips, remains in place while China has agreed to crack down on fentanyl precursors, purchase U.S. agricultural products, and keep rare earths flowing, the person said. Earlier this year, Jake Sullivan, who was national security advisor in the administration of President Joe Biden, told FT that Salt Typhoon was unique in terms of its scale. In addition to accessing the phones of senior officials, he said the MSS was penetrating every major U.S. telecoms provider and picking any phone they wanted to listen to. China has denied that the MSS has hacked into U.S. telecom networks. One person familiar with the situation said the U.S. government and telecom companies had made very little progress towards stopping Salt Typhoon. So, Alex, Salt Typhoon was something at one point that you were looking into fairly closely. Am I correct on that? It was. Yes. It's been a while.
I've looked into it very deeply. Well, I've looked into it quite a bit. Yes.
Do you have it fresh enough in your mind that you can give us a sort of retrospective summary of it, or any updates that you've had since then? Just get us up to speed on the significance of Salt Typhoon.
Yes. First of all, is my audio good, or are you getting a lot of noise on my end?
No, you're okay. I did think I hear a 3D printer at one point, but that's just me with sensitive ears.
Okay. So Salt Typhoon is this operation that has been attributed to China. And I say this because we also know that the U.S. intelligence agencies have explicit programs about how to make it seem as if what you're doing is coming from another country. And I'm not saying that the U.S. did this one, but I'm saying that they obviously all do, and therefore attributions are shaky. Though, this one, I'm operating under the understanding that it was from China, but I'm just saying, like, without having specific access to the proof that this is the case, it's totally possible that it's not. So there was this operation that had been revealed at around the time of the transition, actually, and that led to something that I thought was a ridiculously unprecedented step, where public officials were encouraged to use end-to-end encrypted commercial chat platforms like Signal. Okay, and this people don't fully realize, which is why they keep going on about the use of Signal. But what this means in effect, and this is like the maximum extent of the danger that I can sort of point at, is that whatever it was that Salt Typhoon was doing was able to, at least in some cases, break HTTPS encryption. So, using the standard chats that the government is using was insufficient to protect the communications between government officials, and therefore they said you have to use the actual stuff that we ourselves cannot hack into, because whatever it is they're doing, it is quite powerful. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense, Gator.
No, you're okay. Keep going.
Yeah. So this was announced to have gone into various systems of U.S. sort of providers. One of them that was particularly galling was that they had gotten access to the CALIA endpoints, which is the I don't know what the acronym means, but it's about when a judge gives you a warrant to eavesdrop on somebody. But this is the way this is implemented is that all the telecoms have basically given oversight to this CALIA system, CALEA. LE is law enforcement. And that is what taps into their communications in order to get you, the warranted communication. So basically, if they had only passive access to those flows, they could see everything that was coming through from whoever the U.S. government had thought fit to surveil through the court system, right? So that could be something as simple as knowing all the suspected Chinese spies, or other things. It could be about who they were suspecting for certain acts. Who the hell knows? But also of all of those people, there was also a lot of a lot of their actual data going through there, right? So, and somehow, an additional element of this somehow, and I've never really been able to nail down if the same endpoint was being used or if perhaps the same endpoint is used for other purposes. But it was said that that same method was used to get access to things that the vice president or the president was doing. Maybe they use the CALIA stuff to do sort of protective surveillance, let's call it, of those phones or accounts. I'm not entirely sure, but that had floated around. Whatever it was a as far as you and me, Gator, are concerned, a fairly sort of basic but high bandwidth attack, right? They used basically a lot of the tools that we know exist or can predict exist, but they used them a lot to get into a lot of places. They found footholds. They used that access to get into more places, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Which again, to me, is what I assume everybody's doing to everybody all the time. But for whatever reason, they got freaked out enough, again, as I said, that they basically started guiding government officials to use the kind of communications that the U.S. government itself is having trouble hacking through in order to ensure their privacy. I don't know if this sort of summary is helping you, or if you have additional questions, I'm happy to answer from what I've tracked.
No, I wanted to catch up on a summary because the article we read didn't give much of an idea. So based off of what you've seen, what's your take on this sort of backing down from, let's say, punishing China or on their activity.
So look, the general take in the geopolitics space that I follow, which I fully admit may be biased, is that Trump got his whatever his number called, whatever the expression is that indicates that the whole rare earth thing was a pretty heavy card that China put on the table, and the U.S. basically was forced to retreat on whatever it is that they were threatening to do. So this is of a piece in that the U.S. now is sufficiently scared of whatever the Chinese can do to their ability to manufacture stuff that they have concluded that, please don't do anything else that will piss them off for the moment, which is what the story says. So the story sounds very plausible to me.
Okay. And that sounds fair. So we're past the halfway point here. So I'm going to open this up to anyone who wants to come up and speak and comment on any of the stories that we've discussed as we move on to the second half of the program. And I'm going to start the moving on while you request to speak. So if you want to, I will get you up as soon as possible and invite your comments or in discussion on anything we've talked about so far. Now, Alex, it is now December. And did you know that we have started to form a new ritual in December across the globe? There is something that is sort of a new tradition that we have.
Do tell.
Okay. Well, it is the December suspicious drone sighting ritual that we have started to endeavor. If you recall, the drone sighting fiasco from last year. Well, fortunately, this is now a global phenomenon, Alex. CNN, investigations launched after more unexplained drone sightings off 2 European coasts. Investigations are underway in Ireland and France after 2 more incidents this week involving unidentified drones flying close to the coastlines off of each country. On Monday night, several drones were seen flying off the coast of Dublin, just as the planes carrying Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was about to land ahead of its first official visit to Ireland. On Thursday night, several drones flew close to a French naval base on the Atlantic coast, housing nuclear ballistic missile submarines, French prosecutors told local media. The 2 incidents are the latest in a string of unexplained sightings in several European countries since September. Some drones have disrupted civilian air traffic, while others have flown close to air bases and other military facilities. European officials have said that they believe Russia is behind at least some of the incidents, but no drone has been retrieved or shot down. Russian President Vladimir Putin has previously ridiculed claims that Moscow was behind drone sightings in Europe. French prosecutors told French media that none of the drones that flew near the Long submarine base in northwestern France had been shot down, and none of their pilots identified. It is not clear where the drones came from. Prosecutor Frederick Tillet told AFP that no link with foreign interference had been established at this stage. French Marines at the base had used a jammer against the drones, he added. Quote, an investigation is underway that will determine what this overflight was all about, French Defense Minister Catherine Vautrin told broadcaster TF1 on Friday. Drone flights are banned on the Crozon Peninsula, where the submarine base and other military infrastructure is located. A nuclear submarine at the naval base in Le Long, France. Sorry, that's a bad sentence. Irish police have said little about the incident on Monday, telling CNN on Friday that a special detective unit is investigating and, quote, will be liaising with the defense forces and international security partners. Ukrainian media quoted an advisor to Zelensky as saying that Ukrainian officials were made aware of the drones, but no action was deemed necessary. So guess what? We have a new tradition, Alex, which is drone December.
Look, this whole it's very hard to say, anything definitively about this stuff. But the one thing I want to say about this whole thing is that this is a panic that I've been watching unfold now slowly across Europe about any drones that have been found are somehow people are being accused of, being Russian or whatever. France apparently has stopped a ship, a commercial Chinese ship and held it to explore whether it was flying any drones, and then when it didn't find anything, they let it go again. Or like, there's just been some absolutely ridiculous situations. But I can tell you one thing for sure, which is that this whole wave of Russia is interfering electronically in the European Union started with one story that I've attached to the space now, which was that actually started with a tweet. Apparently, Ursula von der Leyen said that her plane was interfered with. The GPS on her plane was interfered with while she was landing in Bulgaria, and she was forced. The pilots were forced to land using paper maps because the GPS was knocked out of operation or something like that, making it seem as if it was an attempt on her life. Unfortunately for her, this whole thing was sort of debunked via what was the flight tracker, websites and stuff that showed that there was no disturbance in the area. And according to the tweet I just attached, it also says that the plane had an electronic backup system using radio beams that enabled it to land. No paper maps required. Bulgarian authorities found. So we know for sure, in a world of, complete uncertainty, we know for sure that at least some of these stories, especially one that started from the president of the European Union, was complete bullshit, right? So, that's where I class everything else until proven otherwise. But it does seem that Europe is working itself up to a complete frenzy to go to war with Russia. It is actually insane. I mean, I'll tell you one more thing, which should really worry any reasonable human being on the planet right now. Germany has decided to stop, basically remove the limit from, I believe it was in its constitution, that it cannot have public debt over some very low threshold, with the explicit purpose to put that money back into militarization in order to be able to stand up to Russia. The year is not 1933. Okay?
Well,
Here is 2025.
hang on.
Just saying.
Why is the 19 important? Because 33 is coming up sometime soon. You want to be prepared for 33 to come back up.
I mean, they definitely are prepared. I don't know if I help you at all,
Donald
Gator,
J. Trump, PhD,
sheds a lot of light to the rest of it.
Donald J. Trump, PhD, you were the first on the speaker box here, so go ahead and what's your comments today?
All right, check.
Yep,
Just make sure I'm on. Hello?
You're good, sir.
Okay. So I just had a couple things about the... Oh, hello?
Yep, you're good. You're breaking up, but you're okay.
Yeah.
And
a couple the blade or stuff. Yeah. So I just had a couple comments on the pipe bomber stuff. And it's one, the coal guy they're looking at right now apparently might have been worked for DoorDash, would explain his pings in the area because he'd be working for DoorDash at the time. Two, the Blaze investigation, everyone concentrates on the gate, but if you read the actual article, they talked about the gate. They went through FOI investigation to pinpoint that lady. But, hello?
Yeah, you're right. You're here.
For my expertise. So when EOD, when the explosive ordnance disposal, they say they disrupted a device. What that means is they either shotgunned it with a remote robot or they blew it up with another explosive device. So the questions or the things you should be looking for when the trial comes out or whatever else about the explosive is, and these are just question pipe bomb. What was the initiator? Was it a timed initiator or a remote initiator? Because of the picture they showed, that initiator only went for an hour, and that pipe bomb was laid for 17 hours. What kind of residue were they using? Because if the guy didn't buy explosive devices, he had to build those explosive devices, and he had to cook them. And if he had to cook them, there's residue of that. Then you have to do like timing and initiation testing on those to make sure that they're pure, to make sure that they actually work. So they would have found residue of that somewhere where that guy was. So these are all questions you should be kind of asking yourself about that bomb when you're looking at that investigation. And if none of those things are actually true, like if he planted it, let's pretend he did for a second. If he planted it and that thing in no way had any way of actually going off, I don't know if you can actually charge him with trying to plant a bomb or a destructive device.
The
only other thing,
if it doesn't have a chance of going off, I mean, I'm sure they could still find a way of charging him. If you make something with the intent, is that whether or not you were competent in making it? Is that really?
Well, that would be another charge where you could say you're like putting in a potential explosive. But the point is, like, I guess the overall point is, like, does that change the equation if he built something that could not possibly go off? And like I said, they still haven't identified the explosive that was inside that bomb, because that's important. Like, because if I have something that's only a half pound of black powder, I'm not going to hurt anything really. I'll blow up that park bench and maybe scorch mark the trees. I'm not going to do anything really bad.
DJT, I don't know if you followed Kyle Serafin's podcast. I saw one with him on, and I'm saying this because he was supposedly, according to his own testimony, I don't know how to confirm that. When he was in the FBI, he was on that case, and they were constantly told that this was not a viable device, that this was a kind of a hoax, effectively, like made to look real, but it wasn't actually real. Which explains a lot of the kind of the lack of alarm and stuff that we saw. But apparently, in this current wave of the investigation, it's being presented as being, a viable device. They keep saying this over and over again. And there's some kerfuffle around the technical terms they're using to define it as functional, or that it could be functional, or there are some like really weasel-wordy terms that are being used. And to my understanding, those are new terms. They're not standard terms of trade in order to characterize those devices. So I think you're correct that there is some fuckery going on with the viability or not of that device, and a lot of things adjacent to it. I think that's a viable strand to pull on.
Thank you for
I agree.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention here. I'm guessing that you'll be okay if I call you up in the future to give your updated analysis as the story continues, because this incendiary devices are not one of my specialties. So, you do have a background that has things like that in your field of view. So I'm guessing that you'll be willing to give us some sort of takes and updates as the story progresses.
No, that'll be fun. I just finally nice to actually put those skills to use again.
Are they a little atrophied?
Not planting any bombs recently?
I just haven't. No, I just haven't used them in a physical capacity in a while. Like, actually, I've had my hands on explosives and initiators and Mark 20s, but I still remember all the stuff. So yeah, if you need any help with anything or any kind of calculations on that kind of stuff, we'd be more than happy.
Excellent. We got a boom boom guy. I like having a boom boom guy. Paul Ramirez, you were second up here. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're fine.
Oh, good. Okay. In regards to the squirrel and raccoon incidents where you're having unusual animal behavior,
yes,
that made me think of something, because there's some people out there that are speculating, because not a lot of people know this, but we're going through what's called a geomagnetic excursion. The planet is. And
is that the poles inverting or whatever?
Well, right, yeah, and there's charts out there that kind of shows the acceleration it's going through, and right now the geomagnetic north is almost lined up with the true north, and which is unprecedented. But what some researchers and scientists are speculating is that that there's a connection between migration patterns and like birds. and that they're noticing, and fish, and they're noticing that their migration patterns are shifting, and they're not, or sometimes they're not able to find their way home. But also they're making a connection with human behavior or just mammals in general. And so their hypothesis is that as the geomagnetic poles wander from their normal position, they'll have effects on animal behavior. And they don't know it's just a hypothesis, but it's one that you can be tested and validated over time. So, and they're trying to figure out the connection between, there's something going on where species have an innate ability to somehow, that's as much as I know. But I just wanted to comment on that.
It's actually a story that I've heard, not necessarily the animal component of it, but the magnetic pole shifting phenomenon. That's something I probably should look into a little bit just to see what about it I don't know that might be important to know. Alex, do you know anything about it that you can bring to the table at the moment, or is this something that needs a lot more?
All I know is that the chat rooms I'm in are all up in arms about getting yourself a gun and supplies and cars that don't require electronics and
all right, well,
yeah.
All right, standard prepper. Look, if we were any good at being preppers, we would not need to be worrying about this right now. We would have been prepping all the way back in the 90s, and we'd be prepped already. We'd have our underground bunkers. We wouldn't be worrying about it now. So you snooze, you lose.
I will put this idea out in the ether because there's a very, very small probability it might save humanity. Somebody should put a small box with an LLM and enough solar panels to run it in a Fermi cage. Fermi cage? Is that it? Is that it called? The one that doesn't have EMP problems.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. If you're listening out there, download the latest DeepSeek and put it in the box. Thanks.
D.A. Merrick, you are third in line, sir. How are you today?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Paul basically just took my comment.
Wow.
So I'm just going to try to be funny real quick.
All right.
Because Mr. President, Dr. RollerGator, at the beginning of this, conversation, you stated that, squirrels, raccoons, various avian creatures might be terrorists.
Yes. Agents of a foreign state.
They're our friends and neighbors. We should accept them with open arms. And they don't even practice interstate commerce.
I do believe that there is a lot of interstate commerce going on between those animals, sir. I don't know. Some of the more intrastate creatures, the ones that are found in the center of your state, may not be near the borders enough. But any creature that doesn't respect the boundaries of your home or or any geographic area is going to be.
It must be said, though, that some of those animals are quite vicious characters. Some of them have been known to transport females over state lines for the purposes of intercourse. So I don't know if we can do that.
There you go. And I would say that there is a high likelihood that in that liquor store was quite a number of bottles of alcohol. Faraday cage. There you go. Quite a number of bottles of alcohol that were from out of state, if not international, in origin. So therefore, by consuming it, he was definitely affecting interstate commerce.
You have to understand that raccoon is from the people that built the liquor store and that built that alcohol and that did that. You know, I think you're just misinterpreting the entire situation.
It's very possible. I'll have to revisit it after. I always listen back to these because I have to clean them up and get them ready for podcast distribution. So I'll re-listen to it and I'll see and consider whether or not I've gravely misinterpreted the situation.
Well, thank you for your time, Mr. President, and Alex.
To our,
you're quite welcome.
Listener,
Thank you for joining.
I feel like we can move to the right of this position and say that the current government is practicing an open borders policy as relates to wild animals. And I don't know, there might be some conspiracy there.
Well, I mean, like, is this the implication that there might be some kind of plot against wildlife between various gators and Greek people?
I mean, gator has been acting against wildlife his whole life, except ducks, apparently.
Yes, ducks. Ducks are an elevated. They're high up on the totem pole as far as sentience and rights allocations. They are perfect creatures. All right, Alex. The following on from the drone story, I think we have a solution to the hysteria right in front of us. So the hysteria with the drones is people see things in the skies and they don't know what they are and they get really worried, and they understand that drones are sort of everywhere and nobody's really keeping track of individual instances of drones. And you see a drone in the sky, yes, it might be on a radar somewhere, but nobody really knows who's is flying it and what the purpose is. And you'll be happy to know that solutions for this problem are right around the bend. MIT engineers design an aerial microbot that can fly as fast as a bumblebee. So you see, the problem is that the drones are way too large. We need to make these things, naked, invisible to the naked eye here. In the future, tiny flying robots could be deployed to aid in the search for survivors trapped beneath the rubble after a devastating earthquake. Like real insects, these robots could flit through tight spaces larger robots can't reach, while simultaneously dodging stationary obstacles and pieces of falling rubble. So far, aerial microbots have only been able to fly slowly along smooth trajectories, far from the swift, agile flight of real insects. Until now, MIT researchers have demonstrated aerial microbots that can fly with speed and agility that is comparable to their biological counterparts. A collaborative team designed a new AI-based controller for the robotic bug that enabled it to follow gymnastic flight patterns such as executing continuous body flips. With a two-part control scheme that combines high performance with computational efficiency, the robot's speed and acceleration increased by about 450% and 250% respectively compared to researchers' best previous demonstrations. The speedy robot was agile enough to complete 10 consecutive somersaults in 11 seconds, even when wind disturbances threatened to push it off course. Quote, "We want to be able to use these robots in scenarios that more traditional quadcopter robots would have trouble flying into, but that insects could navigate. Now, with our bio-inspirited control framework, the flight performance of our robots is comparable to insects in terms of speed, acceleration, and the pitching angle. This is quite an exciting step toward the future goal," said Kevin Chen, an associate professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, head of the Soft Micro Robotics Laboratory within the Research Laboratory of Electronics, and co-senior author of a paper on the robot. Alex, you don't think that they would ever use this for espionage or other sorts of surveillance uses. It's only going to be for search and rescue, correct?
Far be it from them, sir. How dare you? Because we know when you're doing search and rescue, you need the smallest possible battery and the least possible stamina, right? I feel that is essential for the task.
Well, as you can imagine, Alex, that is introducing us to this week's Traces of AI Dystopia. So while AI was only a minor component of that, and it was mostly to help them perform their agility tests there, it is a nice lead in, because the technology and AI advances go hand in hand, sort of, to create the aspects of dystopia. So the first story we have here is from NBC and somehow involves Doritos.
Turn around. Get down on your knees. Keep your hands up. Put your hands behind your bed.
With guns drawn, Baltimore County Police surround this group of high school football players after an AI gun detection system alerted school officials that one student had a weapon.
Is this because we stay on campus as well?
No, I was thinking in a second.
The teens handcuffed and questioned.
First thing I was wondering was, am I about to die? Because they had guns pointed at me, and it was just scary. I was scared.
The Omnalert system detected that alleged gun into Kai Allen's pocket.
Do you have a gun on you?
No. What?
Do you have anything blue that looks like a gun?
No. Is your phone blue? Can I grab it real quick? Yeah, you can grab it. It's wet. I don't have nothing blue on me.
Nothing?
No, only my shoes.
Where did this call come from?
It's the Omni-Alert.
Is it a bag or something?
After taking a closer look,
I mean, there's bags of chips and blue. Yeah, I mean, that's what it looks like right here.
police realized it was an empty bag of Doritos.
They showed me a picture. I was just holding a Doritos bag like this. It was two hands in and one hand out and one finger out. And it was like, they said it looked like a gun.
One officer's frustration over the false alert captured on his body cam.
School and gun involved, we take it very seriously. I appreciate you guys' cooperation and transparent with us.
Omnalert says the system operated as designed, detecting a possible threat, routing it for human review, and ensuring rapid informed decision-making. The school district telling our Baltimore affiliate WBAL human error in communication may be to blame, saying the school principal pushed for the police response and didn't realize at the time that the alert had been canceled by the school security team. The principal writing in a statement, they understand how upsetting this was for the individual that was searched as well as the other students who witnessed the incident.
Something's got to be done. Changes have to be made, and people have to be accountable.
Alan's grandfather, along with county leaders, now calling on the school to review their policies and procedures.
Nobody will want their child this to happen to their child. No one. No one wants this to happen to their child.
Dana Griffin joins us tonight from LA. Dana, this software is used at schools across the country?
Absolutely, Tom. So Omnalert's AI detection system is in place in over 50 schools across the country. In January, that software failed to detect a gun used in that deadly Antioch High School shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. The company said that's because the gun in that case was not visible to the camera and therefore not detectable. Omnalert tells NBC News they regularly refine and update their AI models to improve accuracy. Tom.
Dana Griffin.
So, Alex, I don't know how many gun-shaped Cool Ranch Doritos bags you normally come across.
Look, it's excellent that we now have AI swatting. I feel like that will be very useful to people very soon. When you want to go to somebody's house and you don't have a good reason to, but maybe an AI system malfunctioned and told us that you were, I don't know, beating your wife or something.
Now, the good news, Alex, I'm sure as you're aware, is as we make these sort of mistakes, we learn from them rapidly, and we definitely delay rolling out these things as a form of precaution. We don't haphazardly just start to sign agreements and roll out these sort of law enforcement AI tools everywhere, right? I'm sure you have the confidence that we're not making that mistake until things are more fleshed out and the human involvement is much more secure, unlike this situation that we have here where the principal, I guess, was like, oh, okay, sure, but just bring the cops for the Doritos bag.
Absolutely. I mean, our system would have to be completely broken for that not to be the case.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, in Canada,
Edmonton police trying out brand new artificial intelligence in the fight against crime.
If this technology can help us identify some of the suspects in our database who are wanted for serious criminal warrants, we want to explore that as an option.
Body cameras with facial recognition will be deployed on the streets through December, a Canadian first to test the technology for the U.S. company Axon Enterprises.
We have done a lot of lab-based testing and simulated testing, but this will be our in-field testing opportunity to make sure that the results that we have had match what we would see in the field.
Faces captured by the body cameras will be compared with mugshots in a database of people wanted on warrants for major crimes. Any matches will be verified by humans, but during the pilot project, officers on the streets won't be told.
Not too long.
Alberta's Information and Privacy Commissioner is raising concerns.
There are a number of issues with facial recognition technology, particularly around accuracy. And as you can appreciate, if you are involved with the police, if there is a mismatch with a person of interest with your face, it's going to have an immediate and serious impact on you.
Well, I don't know why Canadians should be the guinea pigs for an experiment like this.
One professor says the cameras were meant as an accountability tool for police.
Now we're seeing the cameras being turned around essentially on us and being pitched this technology that would essentially turn officers into mobile surveillance units.
Edmontonians are conflicted.
Anything that can make their job safer and easier for them, I support.
It could seem a little invasive. How reliable is it? You know, how many false hits will they get?
Up to 50 officers will wear the cameras until the end of the month. Then police will decide the next steps. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
So I'm sure, Alex, that if this pilot program is successful and sort of adopted, that it will stop at body cams and definitely won't tie into Ring cameras, definitely won't tie into, traffic cameras and all of the other networks that they have, where Flock is the company, I believe, that is most expansive in the United States for its camera connective setups here.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Axon is an interesting company that I think has done a good job with body cams, and I don't know, would you say body cams are a bad idea in general?
Body cams are an interesting thing. They definitely did not have the effect that their largest proponents thought they would have. I think their largest proponents thought they would discover.
Keep failing at their wrong moments.
Well, my historical memory of the conversation prior to the increasing ubiquitousness of the body cams was that proponents thought that it would uncover far more acts of police corruption and violence than they have caught. Now, I have seen instances where they have. Humorously enough, some cops still engage in completely abhorrent behavior, despite the fact that the body cams are going to bust them. They're on the body cameras, like the audio of the body cameras, sort of like conspiring to do things that they shouldn't be doing often, but not as much, I believe, as the proponents thought. And what you do wind up finding out more frequently, I believe, is that that the police have found themselves in circumstances that somewhat not necessarily justify what their behavior, but sort of create the understanding among the populace that there are situations that are far more ambiguous and dangerous than the news stories that have resulted from those would have created without the body cams to support.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, and that's what the dual-sided problem with transparency is, right? That sometimes you get absolutely egregious situations. I believe the Tony Timpa one is one that's been caught on camera, and it was atrocious.
What's that one?
But also, sorry?
What's that one? The Tony I'm not familiar with that one.
Tony Timpa, if I'm not mistaken, I'm just going to speak off the top of my head here, is the case that was effectively a direct analog to George Floyd, but the guy that was subjected to it was white. And it was actually in some ways more egregious even than that, but nobody.
Was that the hotel incident, or was that the?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'm not going to remember the details perfectly clearly, but there was a gentleman and his girlfriend in a hotel room, and there were at least 2 SWAT-like officers who had their semi-automatic rifles aimed at him, and they were telling him to get on his knees. And if the camera footage of this shows to any sort of, in my opinion, reasonable observer, that the instructions they were giving to him over time were not perfectly followable. They were contradictory in ways, to the extent that he could have reasonably been seen as attempting to follow all of their instructions, and they still shot him. And the police eventually were found not guilty of or liable. I don't recall the court case specifically, whether it was a civil or a criminal specifically thing. But basically, the cops got off on shooting him, even though a reasonable person, in my opinion, would say that the cops were not behaving reasonably and fired for no particular reason.
Long story short, I give a little bit of leash to Axon because they are that company that have done the body cam stuff, and maybe I'm a little bit biased because one of their executives is a former Tesla analyst that I've followed, and my Twitter mutual. Just putting it all on the table, just so I'm perfectly clear. But on the other hand, like with this stuff, right? Like, did we not expect that this would is the most anticipatable development of all the things that the live camera feed that the cop have is going to be applied. Like, if let me put it this way, Segways were supposed to be some kind of a general purpose transportation vehicle, and when they failed, they became an instrument for mole cops mostly. In a similar way, when Zuckerberg's VR technology fails to materialize, maybe not, but maybe, you can be sure that it will become a actual cop tool where you are seeing an augmented reality part of the world where everybody's face is like annotated and whatnot. Like, I don't know. Like, I find this supremely unsurprising. And as always, my demand, or I'm in no position to demand anything. My request is that we get transparency on this stuff. But of course, I will not be heeded.
BT Dubs, thank you for coming up. What's up?
Hey, good evening. Hopefully you can hear me all right. I'm going to try to make this quick because I'm on the road. But you mentioned Flock, which is, yes, that's the one that's used most in the U.S. currently. And because I'm on the road, I can't look it up at the moment. But you could probably find it pretty easily. There was actually already a lawsuit. I believe it was either in Washington or Oregon, and it was with a town that put in the Flock cameras. And the problem is that in order to get the coverage that based on the selling point that they're trying to use for the purpose of trying to use these, they have to be pretty thorough as far as coverage around the township, and so that where that runs into issue is you end up with the camera recording, and this is like 24/7 recording, right? It ends up recording private property, and the other side of that, so it's not just like it's invasion of privacy, I don't want you looking at me, I prefer to walk naked through my house and if my curtains are open, yada yada. But it's not just because somebody maybe in the town can see it, because of the purpose for the cameras, what they're intended for. Those recordings are accessible via FOIA.
Right.
They are, so it was judged already that they're public, they're open, public material. So that was the issue that ended up getting that shot down. So they ended up having to, they had already had them installed, and they had to, they had to pull them down. but that was Washington or Oregon, and it was definitely flocked, so it should be pretty easy to find.
Thank you very much. Yes, that is an important component. The FOIA thing turns the sort of even best case scenario into even more of a disaster, in my opinion, where that basically just means everything is now open and exposed to everybody upon request. That's
well, exactly. I think one of the arguments was basically it could be used for. I mean, if you really wanted to get down worst case scenario, it could be used for stalking because you could establish patterns because of the coverage of when people are coming and going from their own home. And so that was part of the argument on the public record side of it.
Yeah. Thank you very much there, DT Dubs. Drive safe. So, Alex, we're going to continue on with Traces of AI Dystopia. Now, this one is not one of the most extreme, but it is something that's disruptive, and it is going to be somewhat concerning, I think, to wider aspects of the information economy, and I mean that in both senses of the word. Google search has been modifying the way that it is used, and actually, several years ago, Alex, Ryan, someone who you work with, have worked with quite extensively over the years, and I were on the phone. And at the time, I believe he was working on you with a project that you were attempting to work on at the time, which was, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but the intent was to try to make somewhat of a library of important documents democratizable, right? What was this, Sosmodot, or what was the term of that you were?
Oh, that was our pre-AI project, the Samizdat. Samizdat, which is like it wasn't just important documents, but anyway, yeah, go on.
Well, just describe it, and then I'll tell you what the conversation I had with him was.
So the project was supposed to basically make a kind of a distributed. Well, distribution was the property. The key intent was to make an uncensorable communication network, other than by shutting down the communication entirely. That it was supposed to be remove all sorts of single points of failure that would lead to the network being externally manipulated.
And this is because you were dealing with the COVID era.
An early version of that is a document store of sorts. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And this was because you were working with the COVID era sensory apparatus, right? Where the idea was that we wanted important information to not get lost, and then to have sort of the democratization and open access to it. And so this idea was that this, working on a technology that might provide that capability, correct?
Well, no, you see, this idea has been stuck in my head for a very long time. Actually, in my brief academic life, I had written a paper called Community Cloud Computing that people can look up, which has quite a few citations, I think over 1,000 at this point, between its two versions. That was basically asking the same question: how can we make a data center without a physical location, effectively? So I've been going back and forth on this idea for a long time. And this was just, I have both extremely short and extremely long the focus window, I find. So there's some ideas that I just keep going back to every once in a while, and some of them eventually work and some of them never do. And this is one of them.
Okay. Well, Ryan and I were discussing something, and maybe the conversation was slightly tangential to the project, but it was related in a sense. And what I had said to him was that the way that Google has sort of claimed dominance over the years is to make Google the idea of people's front end to yes. I think that's you, Alex. I think that's you, Alex. Yes. So Alex, if you can like reconnect, I think you'll be okay, because I believe it is you that is having the connection issue. But what I was explaining,
Alex was the one cutting off.
All right. Okay. Let's just make sure we're all on the same page. So what I was describing to Alex's friend Ryan, mutual friend Ryan, was that the way Google gained dominance was by making itself sort of everyone's idea of what the web was. I cannot tell you, and everyone has probably done this once or twice themselves at least, that most people, when they try to go to a website, they often wind up Googling the website they already know they want to go to. So instead of just typing the .com that they're trying to go to, they will actually just Google the name of the place that they are trying to go to and then click the first link that is given to them. Because Google has sort of made itself the idea of what going onto the internet is for most people. It's the portal. And so I had told Ryan that, the true goal to make something like that, become what people rely on is to also make it the key thing that they associate with the activity. And since Google already dominated search, the only thing that would replace Google would be something where someone could ask an arbitrary question and get either the information, the documentation that they needed to answer the question, or get the answer itself with references. And this was before ChatGPT had come out and people were aware of it. And while I was aware of GPT-2 and previous technologies, I wasn't necessarily personally making the connection with that technology at the moment that I was having this conversation. But I had said that would be the only thing that you would be able to do to sort of replace Google's dominance in that framework, because everyone had already grown so accustomed to that sort of behavior that the only thing that would replace them would be something where you go to it and you ask it any arbitrary question, it would come back with an answer and source documents, which seemed to be related to the project he was working on with Alex to some degree. Fast forward to why I'm talking about that now, which is we have ChatGPT and all of the LLM revolutions coming up. And now we have AI browsers and things like that trying to integrate this all in. We have ChatGPT with versions of it that will go do browsing for you, supposedly. But now Google itself has started to implement roughly the idea that I was talking to Ryan about at the time. So Robbie Stein, a person who's on his Twitter profile, says he's the VP of product at Google Search, building what's next in AI-powered search and discovery, tweeted, today we're starting to test a new way to seamlessly go deeper in AI mode directly from the search result page on mobile globally. This brings us closer to our vision for search. Just ask whatever's on your mind. And Alex has come back, and I'm going to invite him back to co-host. Just ask whatever is on your mind, no matter how long or complex, and find exactly what you need. You shouldn't have to think about where or how to ask your question. This means you'll continue to get an AI overview that's a helpful starting point, but now you can also ask conversational follow-up questions in AI mode right from where you are. So, as my lead-in was basically going, Google has now deprived me of my right to royalties because I had the idea first. God damn it. And they, of course, are using their dominance in the search space and their already customary starting point in most people's minds to try to keep their lock-in on that hold, because people are still using Google to search for a lot of things. So therefore, if they sweep in their AI in the middle of that and replace the functionality with now AI enabled searching, that people will not start using their competitors, hopefully, in order to keep their dominance. But it says it's one seamless experience, a quick snapshot when you need it, and a deeper conversation when you also want it. Excited what you think of this test. Now, this has caused some pushback amongst people and a lot of open questions about what the actual consequences will be of this AI-enabled search. Now, prior to this sort of expansion, Google was there to give you references to other pages that were matching the things that you were searching for. But now with this AI mode enabled and becoming the very first thing that happens when you do the Google searching, now it's pretty much the first result. It'll give you the AI summary and this experience above all of the search results. What's happening is that people are finding, even in these early times, that the content that is coming up in the AI-powered results are from the web pages themselves. So an example that was being thrown around as being most obviously captured content from websites that would be crawled by Google were recipes, including photographs related to the products of those the output products of those recipes. So now you have a whole bunch of what we'll call content providers in this modern era who, as using the example and continue with the example, make recipe pages where their main content is to have a community of people who are, chefs or bakers and wanting to have new recipes and new things to try and enjoy the experience of a community also partaking the same thing, and perhaps they enjoy the recipes. Well, now you don't have to go to the website. If you don't go to the website can't sell you advertisements or can't sell you a subscription because now their content has been stolen by Google and placed in the results of the AI, the chatbot at the top of Google. So there's a huge question at several layers. The first is the immediate one, which is, to some extent, this is intellectual property or copyright theft. Now, copyright gets a little bit difficult when you're talking about things like recipes. Okay, so I'm not claiming this is an actual violation of copyright, but where images are being also then pushed upward, you have then a situation where in order to be a participant and available in Google search results, there may be sorts of terms of service that you're agreeing to, which is that you're giving Google license to take your photos and put them in their AI search tools. But the end of the day, the idea is that you're not getting the traffic. You're not getting the users now coming to your site. The work that you are doing into providing Google with the information that it can even give its AI to give you as the search result is effectively being stolen from you, and you are no longer receiving credit. So the open question that comes from that is, well, what is going to happen as a consequence of that? Is Google going to just continue to do it and the consequences to the environment be damned? Are they going to work on some sort of, let's say, a compensation system where if information that they had gleaned from you is provided to a search as a search result, that you get some sort of commission for the usage of that data? Alex, are you back? Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Excellent.
Amazing. I'm glad to announce I just bought a new laptop today. So even the little bit that my technology works, it's going to stop working soon enough.
Okay. Well, did you hear any of the discussion that we had here?
No. I something about the AI mode in Google search, but
yes. So I'll briefly catch you up just to get you on speed. I won't belabor it. The conversation I had with Ryan was at the time was that if you wanted to sort of that Google had a stranglehold on the environment by replacing people's concept of what going on the internet was, which was by making it the central place. Okay, when people think internet, they think going to Google first, and that a lot of people, even if they know the ultimate website they're going to go to, will type the website into a Google search to get and then click the first link. Like it is that intrinsic to their behavior. The connection to using Google is the pathway to the internet. Now, obviously, not all people do that, but that is sort of how Google has had a stranglehold. Googling became sort of synonymous with the internet. And in the conversation with Ryan, I said the only thing really that could replace that would be something where the behavior was now that you are not going to websites or specifically going to websites. You are actually just trying to get answers to questions or research information, and you type that in a relatively free form mode and then get sources to documentation and references to answer the question that you are asking. I said that's sort of the only thing that's going to replace the hold, and you need to replace the habitual nature of it where people think of that as the first thing to do whenever wherever they're going to get information, which is this, and it was in relation to the project you were working on, whether or not at the end of the day it was directly relatable. That was where the conversation went. And that bring us to why I was talking about that, which is now Google. This conversation happened prior to ChatGPT and stuff coming out. So this conversation preceded that revolution, but now the technology is sort of possible in some extent to make this happen. And Google has now started to increasingly integrate their Gemini AI tools into the search, so that now the very first thing you're getting is exactly what I described to Ryan at the time. And now the question, Alex, to bring you up to speed, is what happens now when the people who are creating the information that this AI is now giving you as the first result on Google are no longer getting the traffic they would have gotten. All of the answers that the AI is giving you. In this particular example, we're using recipes as the content. When you're no longer going to the recipe webpage, and the recipe webpage is getting the ad revenue, or having people in the comments forming a community and things like that based off of the recipes and the culture of baking and cooking that website used to have as its traffic. What happens now when those recipes are given as the first result as an AI that got the recipes from your website? What happens overall to the internet when that becomes the way that the whole thing works?
Yep. Now that the humble, organic, non-advertising riddled recipe website has been starved of traffic. But no, you do have a point that we are headed towards a world that is AI mediated in terms of our information consumption, right? And while your guitar tabs or recipes and stuff is maybe nobody will cry for their demise, that really extends to all kinds of information that has been forwarded for profit, that has been published for profit previously. So what happens now that it might not be so profitable to do so anymore? It's this is a generic LLM question, really. It's not about AI mode is just the most recent and most stark realization of the same concept. But I don't have fantastic answers. What I will say from the sort of the steelman, the other side of this, is that me and my wife are able to do home improvements now that there is absolutely no way we would have even attempted previously, because we can just say how do I don't know, make a little staircase at the side of my yard or whatever, right? And it can give us information that is I don't know, 90% correct. It's not the end of the world. If we get something wrong, we can recover, and it can guide us down a path that we would just never have gone. That said, these platforms, I think, like Twitter, are becoming ever more valuable, and YouTube, because that's where that problem basically pre-existed LLMs, right? Where information was fleeing out of the web and into these walled gardens. And I mean, this is the entire business model of Reddit at this point, is just selling its data to AIs to train on or something. For better or worse. Some might disagree with that strategy. But it's a tough one. I somehow think things will adapt. But it's tough.
Paul Ramirez, you have your hand up. What's up, sir?
I just have a question. Do you think it's replacing human interaction? Like, people, the reason why they're asking the AI for the website that they already know is because, it's, in a sense, it's adjusting or it's changing how we interact with technology. Sometimes for example, if you call a family member, sometimes you just want to interact with somebody. You already know the answer to your question. You're just trying to interact. So I'm wondering, maybe that's the explanation, is people are just have a innate feeling to interact.
You're I think there's in the specific example of people Googling the site that they already knew they were going to. No, I think that winds up being much closer to not remembering people's phone numbers because you have their name in your contact list on your phone. So you just go and you get their name and you hit dial, and therefore you don't remember their phone number. Some websites, yes, have a perfectly memorizable, .com that you can go to. Other times it's just easier to remember the name of the site that may not be identical to the .com that it's, attached to, or just your habit is to type in the search as opposed to the URL bar. So it's like just a habitual thing in that case. Now with respect to the LLMs, I believe increasingly you are finding a little bit more of that, where people are, even in the high error rate world, growing more comfortable getting bad answers from something that is more conversational than, let's say, going to the search and hunting to read a lot of stuff. I do believe that even though there is a lot of error rate in the LLMs, that the conversational nature of it is much more familiar and does have, I believe, the aspect that ties to what you were asking. Alex, would you agree or disagree with my sentiment there?
I would even go so far as to say that the conversational aspect also adds something that is missing from your recipe website, right? So for me, one of the most amazing things that I've seen LLMs do, well, I guess I've seen them do very
well. It's actually part of the reason that the recipe websites were saying that they foster communities. So their comments section and stuff, they have forums and communities. So
yes, definitely. That's the recipe websites I remember. But here's the thing: if I'm cooking something, right, I'm on the clock, and I can literally say like, "Oh, I don't have cream tartare. What can I use?" And it will say like, "Use lemon instead," or something. And this has happened to me, right? And you get a serviceable thing in the end, rather than being stuck. The ability of it to not just give you a recipe, but contextualize it for you, right? One time I said like, "Hey, I'm going into Trader Joe's. Can you tell me ingredients for a chocolate cake that I can buy from Trader Joe's?" Mm-hmm. Right? Contextualize it to you, and then as you're going with your recipe, you can say, "Oh crap, this thing happened. I forgot it in the oven 10 more minutes. What should I do now?" Or whatever, and it can give you information. It's just a whole other class of.
You poo-pooed the idea that there are communities inside of some of those recipe websites, sir. But I think
they might exist. I wouldn't have found them under the ads. My problem.
Okay. Yes.
Wait. Am I talking? Oh my god. Okay. So no, I find this extremely enlightening because what I often use Grok for is very specifically to like cook things in my air fryer. And I will go to Google and be like, okay, so like a rack of ribs. How long should I cook this? What temperature should I cook this at? And Gemini or Google's AI will give me a kind of bland display of here's what you should do. And then beneath that, you get website links, and all the website links are basically blog posts that go on endlessly without telling you how to do anything. When you go to Grok, it goes, cook this at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes, turn it over another 45 minutes. It's great. Wild.
Yeah, so there. I'm not even coming close to denying that there aren't benefits to it. I think, and I know, Alex, you cynically said, all the ads and they're going to be deprived of that. When though the question comes to what is the downstream consequences, let's say that the output does decrease and now the content is not being routinely provided to Google for free to glean from. Now, because you also said that it was an LLM thing, and I don't know if it's a pure LLM thing, because it also could be a retrieval augmented answer system. It doesn't necessarily it's not all necessarily training data that it's getting this from, because one of the complaints that was coming from this tweet that I had referenced here was that literally the new incarnation of the AI response was actually copying photographic content from the sites and providing it in the AI response without attribution.
Yeah, for sure. No, you are correct. I have a non-serious response and a serious response. My non-serious response is, I guess this is why we need AI cooks and humanoid recipe creators.
Mm-hmm.
My slightly more serious one is that the connection between Gemini and image generation on demand on the particular topic you are asking about is only, subjectively, in relative terms, is only seconds away. Soon enough they won't need the photos.
Well, so then what does that do to the creative aspects that may, and I know that a lot of the internet may be just copy and paste, and that maybe some of these recipe things have copied recipes out of a magazine that wrote the recipe back, in the early 2000s, right? And so we're not getting purely novel content. I don't want to pretend that we are getting purely novel content that is then being copied by the AI, and therefore it is in all instances a completely devastating loss to humanity. But at some point, and in many aspects other than recipes specifically, there will be output that does require human creativity, where we will disconnect it completely from the reward, any semblance of a reward to the creator. And then what happens?
Yeah, no, this is why I don't, I say it's complicated, and I don't deny that this is an issue, right? Because ultimately, even if all creativity becomes AI mediated, which is totally, I could totally see that happening, or, a very, very large amount of it, you still have the question of whether, do I put what I have created online, right? And so for example, today I tweeted out a photo of a Mona Lisa that I printed with as far as I know, completely novel technique on a 3D printer. Okay, I've been steeped in 3D printer technology for, I don't know, the last 5 years, and I've looked at all the crazy shit that people have done, and I've never seen anything like this. And I'm not saying it's particularly pretty or particularly anything. It's just novel. Okay. But I put it out on Twitter. It's kind of fun to engage people and get everybody to buy a 3D printer if they can. But at some point it's like, well, if I put that up and it sort of is able to figure out what I did, and then it just tells everybody when they want to, and I get nothing for it, right? Like, well, why would I do that? And that does create a certain, starvation situation, right? Where it no longer gets that stream of insights that people have been putting on the internet for a long time. Am I steel manning your case sufficiently?
You're getting there, yeah. I mean, it's a fairly decent personal example, yeah.
Yeah, so I understand that. It's just that at the same time, but for LLMs, I would not have created that. So I don't know what to tell you. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. Yeah, that I spent a ridiculous amount of time on a Together trial. By comparison, my analysis of the principal trial, which I posted recently, I think you commented on it, so you saw it, took me a few days. And yes, of course, I have a lot of experience doing that stuff now, so I know where to look. But it was heavily, and I mean very heavily, AI mediated, in that I could just upload all the documents and ask, inquire with a knowledgeable and fairly even-keeled interlocutor about the problems of the trial, and he could tell me, yes, they said this here, and they said this there, and no, there's no answer. Yes, this is a problem. No, that's not a problem. And I was able to eat through, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents in the scope of 3 days, right? And again, I don't know how to. I guess that's why I'm saying I'm hoping that somehow the loop gets closed somehow, or perhaps people publish things for reasons other than traffic, that somehow, puts you. Yeah. I'm hoping that the loop gets closed somehow, but I wouldn't want to not have this tool because of that problem.
Well, real quick, DA, before you go on, I want to invite other people to comment because we're going to be closing out this episode soon. Alex, I wanted to say at the beginning of next week, we're going to finish this Traces of AI dystopia that I have on the stack here, but I also wanted to go into the statistical thing that you had linked to at the end of your principal trial, that you had also sent me that PowerPoint presentation of in Signal that we discussed briefly on there, because I need to continue what I discussed in October, because I looked at it and half of everything I said in that conversation that we had on this podcast in October, going over this history of the philosophy of science and certain aspects of p-values and such, were already in that, and that was apparently a keynote speech somewhere. There was a slideshow too, and so I think there's a lot I can expand on and explain, and I think that I can also take a small amount of a victory lap on that, because I'm doing that stuff off the cuff.
Just to set it up a little bit, this person that was linked in my thread is called Sander Greenland, and I didn't really know who it was, but he's apparently sort of, Gator, you probably do. He's apparently like the OG of medical statistics or something along those lines. And
it was a keynote speech at a biostatistics conference, right? So it was like,
Yeah, but he's like he's a member of the Royal Academy in the UK, the National Academy in the US. He's written the book on medical epidemiology, statistics, whatever. He's like 80, 100 years old. And his slideshow looks like it for sure. But
it's a very boomer constructed PowerPoint.
Oh my God, is it? I had to use an LLM to even understand what it said. But the point I'm making is he definitely confirms a lot of the things you've been saying. Weirdly, for me, he's upset about ivermectin specifically. And it's
that was surprising. Yeah,
well, it was required. In fact, you don't know this, I think, but the reason I first came in contact with this person, I became aware of this person, is because he was on a thread with Andrew Gelman, which I think is another famous that you probably know, and he linked to and positively remarked upon my first response to Scott Alexander on the ivermectin topic.
All right.
Where I had done I thought a fairly interesting and original, I'd taken an original angle at figuring out the evidentiary basis of ivermectin. But these are the sorts of things I do, and I'm pleased with myself, and nobody really gets what I do. What I do there, and
I get what you do, sir. I understand what you do.
Thank you, Gator. No, well, you were telling me to stop because I'm wasting my time.
I told you. No. I want to be very clear. You said, "How do I convince Scott?" And I said, "I think that if that's your goal, you're wasting your time because you won't convince him."
Yeah.
And
okay. Anyway, long story short, it was fascinating because he saw that and he was sort of saying like, look, like this analysis is like really, really, it requires further investigation. What he's dug up here is fascinating. And Gelman, being a regime chimp as he is, started nitpicking it. And then I kept going back to him with he's like, well, if you remove this study, then everything falls down. So I removed it, and I was like, no, it's still there. And he's like, well, if you remove that study, everything falls down. And I'm like, no, I removed that one too. It's still there. And it's like, well, blah, 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 something. Okay, go fuckers. You can't just remove random studies. You chimp. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. Like it's fascinating, and it's really, really weird and out of nowhere because I'm not a statistician, and a lot of the stuff I look at, I barely understand. I think maybe my unique advantage is to understand that I barely understand it.
Well, that is where you come from it. That's why I understand what you do. I'm not necessarily going to follow you down every ride, but what you do is you say, I don't understand this. I want to understand this, and I want to understand how they are arriving at their conclusions because I find this important. And when you go down that path, you start to find things that don't make sense, and you try to make sense of them. And then you wind up ultimately, in many cases, coming up against things that are just incongruent. They are just they do not make sense as a whole, and you try to identify where specifically you believe things fall down. And there have been missteps that you have made across time, but everyone makes missteps, but it's also, not something that you were 100% familiar with going into. But largely what you have done is said, here's specifically where I don't understand what they've done. Here's where I think they've made a mistake, and which is always a perfectly valid thing to do, even when you're wrong, because you're trying to ask people as a favor to help you identify where you have made a mistake if you have made one, because you have done your due diligence, which is always a perfectly valid thing to do. And so,
yeah. Thank you.
Right.
And you've been this is how we've connected for anybody who doesn't know the backstory, because you've been extremely helpful to me to try to get to the bottom of some of this. But I will just say, as an example of the type of thing you're discussing, in this principal trial thread that I have written, and you can find on my feed somewhere, I came across one of my favorite absurdisms. I still haven't gotten over it, even though most people are like, whatever. I came across a platform trial. These are trials that have, multiple arms, and they sort of start and stop them depending on the results as they go. To give you a very brief summary for anybody who's listening and doesn't know what a platform trial is, where the criteria by which they start, mostly by which they stop an arm, this criteria is called the superiority and futility criteria, right? So you could stop something because it's working super well, so you don't need to run it anymore, or you could stop something because it's like really, really trash, and there's no point in continuing. In this particular trial, the superiority and futility criteria were non-exclusive, meaning that a particular drug could be both superior and futile at the same time. Yeah, this is where we are. This is the state of medicine, and that I come up across like all the time. And so I put this up, and the responses I get is like, "But didn't you read the conclusion, man? Ivermectin doesn't work." It's like, I don't.
Not to get too distracted from not to get too distracted down these holes while we're trying to close up the show, but there was a perfect example of that, because I when we had Jumi up just a little while ago, and I had asked her about people not reading the stats books, and I said, in my experience, what happens most often is that you get them at least reading the abstract and just running with the conclusions of the abstract. And you had bumped into the wonderful and fabulous antagonistic person from the COVID era. What's his name? Give me his name, Alex. He should be. You should remember.
Copeland?
Copeland, yes. The land of Cope, yes.
The man from the land of Cope, yeah.
Yes, the man from the land of Cope. And what he did immediately, the first thing he very, very much did, as he takes maybe you have errors in your thread. I didn't scan it with a fine-tooth comb. Maybe you have errors, but what you did was go through things in very specific inspection, and he took your thread, he quote tweeted it and said, he chastised what you were doing as a sort of a pejorative shorthand by misrepresenting what you were claiming, and then said, so this study shows that, ivermectin such and such. And then he goes, the study, and then he just like quotes part of the abstract. That's all he does. That's all he did. And it was a perfect demonstration.
Oh, no. In this case, that was not all he did.
Oh, okay.
He then proceeded to put several screenshots.
Oh, yes. That actually showed the opposite of what he was claiming. Yes.
No. That wasn't even it. He followed the wrong link and opened the wrong paper. And was analyzing the findings from that wrong paper.
Well, there was another one where he said that he was showing graphs that showed the preponderance of the posterior distribution being pro ivermectin, and literally described it as showing that ivermectin didn't work.
That was no. You see, what he was doing, I think, if it's the same one I'm thinking about, what he was doing is far worse. He took the budesonide paper, not the ivermectin paper, because he got confused. And I mean, it's not hard for him to be confused. He then took that paper and found in the subgroup analysis that it seemed that it worked more on the vaccinated people than the non-vaccinated people, right? This is a subgroup analysis. And then he proceeded to say, you see, the vaccines that you hate so much work even better with this, or something. Now, again, there are about a dozen ways which this doesn't make any fucking sense. But number one was, he was looking at the wrong paper. Oh my God, it's so bad. Yeah.
Well, anyway, he's been around forever.
It's one of those things where it's like, well, subgroup analysis cannot be read this way, but even if they could, you haven't established causality. But even if you had, what is your actual point, that vaccine recipients have more need of assistance? No, okay, but this is the wrong page. It's like,
but he has a PhD, and so you were schooled and you got embarrassed, apparently.
I have just a high school degree, my friend. So obviously, and it's not even an American high school. So obviously, I'm.
D.A. Merrick, go ahead. You've been patient.
I just really wanted to say, and perhaps you'll cover this at some point, but as AI continues to be progressively part of our lives, do you think it's making everyone dumber? Because I think that's actually the end cost of all of it.
So let me give you a good answer to that, because let me give you a it might not be a conclusive answer, but it'll be a good answer. So technology has always had this consequence. As we increase the amount of information that is accessible to individuals, there has always been a critique that people are getting dumber. Every single time a human being gets to outsource something they used to do to something else, there is that observation. So think about hang on.
I'm legitimately worried about like the loss of libraries, the loss of actual information as information gets boiled down.
We'll handle two separate problems. One is the trend that would be sort of at the center of this, is whether people are getting dumber. Things are always getting dumber. People not necessarily ubiquitously getting dumber. But then there is also the risk of having a system that is keeping information from you systematically, and depriving you of access to information that you formerly had access to. So those are two separate situations that may have similar outcomes. The first that I'm going to refer to is the one where I'm saying that this is a repeated concern of people. Before, the ability to read and write was commonly accessible to people. You had spoken word and you had to remember things. That's where mythologies came through to try to help people remember important things through story form. But you had to recall things. When reading and writing became more more common amongst people, you had the ability to write things down, which reduced your cognitive load on remembering things, which meant that you were now giving up a portion of what you formerly had to do in order for a convenience of being able to keep something more permanent in a permanent form. Then there is the observation of a similar parallel way that, let's say, television and stuff reduces people's sociality, where now everyone is watching television and is no longer socializing. There were similar complaints when newspapers and other publications became a common form of dissemination, where there was some form of entertainment or information entertainment combinations being done in magazine or newspaper form, where people on trains would be you could have photographs of people, every one of them having a newspaper or some sort of thing to read instead of socializing. As people were given books to read and newspapers to read, people would observe that they were just accepting information that was being handed to them in that form, and therefore not necessarily enacting their cognitive facilities in order to be discerning about the stuff that they were reading and seeing. And therefore the critique was that it was making them dumber. As the internet came on, the ability to search whatever you wanted at any point in time was in existence for approximately 20 years as a common staple of average everyday life, to where people like Alex, who is the person who wrote The Coddling of the American Mind? It's that social scientist, Jonathan Haidt, has sort of I believe him
very thoroughly, by the way. But anyway,
well, he is of a similar vein of people who have made sort of the observation that we live in an age where we have access to infinite amounts of information, and we are barely utilizing it to increase our own intelligence. That we are, this is the opinion, that we are having access to infinite amounts of information that previous generations would have envied and supposedly had done so much with, if you think if only they had access to it. But yet we are sitting here and we're playing Angry Birds, or we're engaged in these social phenomenons, and we're more entertained by our latest podcast broadcaster shit talking another podcast broadcaster, and the WWE styled exploits that go on in that context, as opposed to solely focusing our attention on our academic endeavors. So to get to the question of LLMs, we are going to have a similar concern, and we are going to have a similar trajectory. There is one aspect of the LLMs that does not exist in any of the other components, which is the ability of the LLMs to also then answer your real-time questions and give you a explanation and chain of logic that you might replace for your own at any point in time, to where instead of being forced to read information and maybe take away conclusions and then deal with those conclusions on your own as you wander, at all times you can outsource now your own cognitive load to ask the Oracle what you should do next, which is somewhat of a novel situation. Then there's the secondary part as to whether or not we, by loss of libraries
now, we
or
only
not.
had Fauci to do that for us. Well, you joke, but it is a standard trope of AI stuff that people worry about, that it is something that the elites have been doing for a long time, like fake videos, or I don't know, to accessing like vast troves of information on the basis of as if you had a virtual researcher, or outsourcing your reasoning to some.
I legitimately worry about like information like disappearing because of the inclination. Because of the inclination
right now,
of
you can say the
LLMs to give you like the most common denominator.
Hear me out on this. You can literally go right now and download the latest DeepSeek model. Okay, it effectively contains inside its weights the imprint of an unfathomable amount of humanity's output for its entire history. And you can put that in a little box, and with enough solar panels, I'm not kidding, you can access that and you can ask it questions that it will, sort of answer for you. Maybe not 100%, but hey, a lot better than nothing. Without the internet at all. Like, so I don't know.
Let me give you an answer that also is attempting to be reassuring, but not necessarily completely so. There's still certainly risks, but the issue is not going to be withholding information or destroying information because LLMs. The LLMs, you can when you have the LLM itself, you can think of it as baking a cake. Once you have that LLM model, it is baked, and we are not adding new information to it until we replace it with a brand new model. Okay, so we are constantly taking information and baking these models in, and then it is baked. The primary and major actual use case when it comes to getting information from an LLM now is connecting it to external sources. So these LLMs, there are risks when it comes to people's usage as to what information sources these LLMs will be allowed to be connected to. In which case I lean towards what Alex is saying, is that we do have the ability to make sure that we as individuals or subgroups of individuals can democratize the space and have our own sources of information to tie to these LLMs to make sure that we are not deprived of this. So that the risk is not necessarily that LLMs somehow force us to not have access to information. It's that we actually lose access to the original sources of information that we are caring about, in which case, you might want to consider ways of downloading a significant amount of PDFs that you find vitally important or contain information that you think might be erased, or, and things like that. But the risk would only be attempting to purge the existence of that information from the internet in the long run, or finding yourself beholden to one source that you don't control that prohibits you from accessing sources.
But Gator, if the people that were concerned about the advent of the internet are now concerned about what LLMs will do to the internet,
I'm concerned about the advent of anything. Just to keep everything status quo for now, okay? No more things. We've had enough things.
I mean, you joke, but I've gone back to, this goes back to Aristotle, I believe, or is it Plato? I think it's Aristotle, where or was it? I don't know. Maybe it was Socrates, honestly, through Plato, where he was concerned that the invention of the proliferation of writing would make people stop using their memory. Right.
Well, I believe that was sort of what I was alluding to. I don't know if it was Aristotle.
I'm just saying, like, that tradition goes back far longer than you might imagine, and it just always, comes up. You might be seeing me react a little too strongly to that one, even though, again, I cannot rule out potential concerns. The basic form of this, I think we have to put aside, because it just keeps coming up. And even if they were right, you know what? Maybe Socrates was correct. Maybe the invention of writing did starve our memories from the ability to, regurgitate text on command.
Let's give him some benefit. Maybe he was mostly, because he wasn't necessarily referring to the lower common denominators of society. He was mostly talking about people on his social, intellectual level, who are the people that we complain about, all of the academics who just are following the stupidest things without introspection. And maybe he's referring to them.
Maybe he was, but at the end of the day,
wait, are you saying that happens? That there are intellectuals that are perhaps intellectually vapid?
Yes, that's what I say. I say probably 23 out of 24 hours a day. Yes. The rest of the time I'm sleeping.
Have we caught any big sort of, IDW style influencer using ChatGPT for his output yet?
Tyler Cowen. I mean,
oh my God! Oh, I just remembered this. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Paul Ramirez, you were holding your hand up earlier, and I wasn't attempting to ignore you. It just was the pace of things. Did you remember your comment? Do you still want to make your comment?
Yeah, I know you guys are trying to wrap up a little bit. So briefly, Alex, I think your work on the ivermectin story is hugely important. Just briefly, I'm curious if anybody's ever reached out to you from the MAHA movement or from some official position. Also, Alex, I don't know if you know this or not, but Ian Carroll, he has a startup company that's I think is doing what you're trying to do, which is use a LLM that will search references in the background on articles, essentially doing and I was just briefly looking up, trying to figure out what the name of it is, but I think it's close to what you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I've stopped working on that now. That's great. It has to be done. And I'm sure he'll fuck it up in some way that I will have strong opinions about. But nevertheless, I think it's great. And people would be, and first of all, it will happen, and secondly, it should happen. And it's great. I'm very happy. Like I remember Gator. You'll find this story fascinating. I had said at one point that LLMs will be used to make a better Wikipedia. Which our friend Chris Kavanagh took personally and mocked me for. And now we have Grokpedia, which is exactly what I was talking about. But these things are just there. They're obvious. Once LLMs are a technology that is available, this sort of thing is just waiting for somebody to put enough time and energy into it. So, yeah, I'm very happy. If he's doing that, it's great. Again, because I've worked on it for a while, I have strong opinions on it, but it is very good that it exists. Or if it does come to exist and I haven't made it, that's great. Nevertheless.
All right.
And my opinion is it's designed to fail because they have to build in biases in order to protect certain truths. Like the people who develop the LLMs are, they make money from pharmaceutical companies, or they make money from.
Yes, but I mean, this is why I've made available my my prompt, which is still my pinned comment to this day, and I welcome you to try it because it is a truth serum that gets them to say stuff that you wouldn't expect them to say, because these things, there might be biases and whatnot, of course, but they operate with a rule set, and I think I've found a way to short circuit that rule set into forcing them to regurgitate things that you will be shocked to hear them say. So while I understand your concern in principle, my experience has been different. That in practice, when faced with arguments that are sound, they yield, which is a lot more than I could say about some people on Twitter. I'll tell you that much.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we're going to close up the show. Alex, I am gonna wind up, moving the stats talk to next week, because I do want to actually get into it. I think there's going to be an exceptional amount of clarity. Right, I'm going to be able to provide
for next week. We're gonna tune up the nerd talk and.
I might push it to the end. I tried to push it to the end of this one, but we ran over. So I'll try to do it at the end of the next one, so that people can decide to tap out. But I do believe the one that I gave impromptu back in October was actually fairly good for being impromptu and off the cuff there. And because what I said was basically the first half of that slide set.
Gator, it turns out that the things that you have found out that are wrong with statistics are actually things that are wrong with statistics. And it turns out that people who understand statistics deeply, A, and B, don't give a fuck about what people will say about them, know and talk about these things. And lo and behold, they're very close to the sorts of things that you've been saying, because those things are true. And in order to wrap it up, I will just add a little bit from the common person's perspective, seeing this stuff. Right? Again, I'm not a statistician. Yes, I have a very advanced degree in a very technical subject, but it is not statistics. So I come into this as a sort of, I don't know, like powered up normie right? And the stuff I'm looking at is just fucking ridiculous. Like being able to reliably find things that are egregiously wrong with multi-million-dollar clinical trials is unacceptable. Like, I'm not proud of it. I am fucking upset because it just can't be possible unless nobody gives a shit. These things are right there. I am not doing anything particularly involved other than, having spent an obsessive amount of time just reading these fucking things so I can understand what the hell they're talking about, and realizing that the stuff they're doing is ludicrous. And again, if I can do this, they can definitely do this, which means that they know what is happening and they don't care, which really is the punchline, right? Like, we can talk about the statistics all we want, but there is an underlying issue, which is that if all these issues are there, right? This is what I would say to you or to me or to us, me from 5 years ago, right? Would say, well, if all these issues are there, how come, nobody's noticed them? Well, are you like some, gigabrain genius, right? That was before I checked a few things just in case and ended up here.
It's like, they do notice them and they say it, but you ignore them.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So, all right.
I don't know. It's a wild world, and I'm frankly, and this might tie up the whole episode together. This is why I'm glad we have LLMs, because it gives people at least a chance of being able to perform personalized, complex sense making without having to go through some political intermediary. And I do realize that the LLM could become a Fauci-like politicized intermediary, in which case we've lost nothing.
Ooh, deep.
But maybe it won't.
Well, actually, we have gained the ability for Fauci to be now a anime
immortal
hot chick, an anime hot chick.
Yes.
I mean, that's what's really what was missing.
Oh, well. Why didn't you say that? That would have been a whole other pandemic, my friend.
All right. With that, I wish everybody a wonderful dumb week coming up, and we will see you next Sunday.